It's 6:30 p.m. on September 18th of 2023, and this is a meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Welcome to everybody. I would invite everybody to rise and join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. There we go. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the British Empire. Soon, they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their treaty rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and Black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. In 1857, the legislature of Ontario gave recognition to Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, all of these years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are now attracted to the livability created here in Oakville. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story so that everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance that are suffered across Canada and even here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. Please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Madam Clerk, I understand we might have regrets from Councillor Knoll. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, ma'am. Otherwise, it looks like we're all here. Council, there are minutes of the regular session of Planning and Development Council from August 14th to be confirmed, and minutes of a regular session of Council from August 15th to be confirmed. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Longo and Councillor O'Meara, thank you. Any objection? There being none, those minutes are confirmed. We have standing committee reports. The minutes of the Committee of the Whole of the Midtown Oakville meeting August 24th, and the confidential minutes of the Budget Committee meeting of September 6th, and the minutes of the Budget Committee meeting in public on September 6th. And I would like I'd like a mover and a seconder for the following proposition: that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole Midtown Oakville meeting of August 24th be approved or confirmed. 2, that the minutes of the Budget Committee meeting of September 6th be approved with a small change, which is to delete the line to mandating staff to pursue a co-location option in the post office for the Oakville galleries. And 3rd, that the confidential minutes of the Budget Committee meeting of September 6th be approved. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Haslett-Deal and Councillor Elger, thank you for the second. Is there any objection to that? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. Now, we could resolve into committee of the whole if we had a mover and seconder for that proposition. Councillor McNeese and Councillor Nanda, thank you. Any objection? That's carried, and we are resolved into committee of the whole. The first items before us are the consent items. Councillor Giddings has asked to separate out for discussion item 8.6. Councillor Giddings, could I have a motion for the rest of them? Thank you. Is there any objection to Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Worcester. Could we take out discussion on 8.4, please?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you.
So Councillor Giddings is moving all but 8.4 and 8.6. Councillor Haslethiel, have you got one?
I just have a question on 8.2.
Ask your question, please.
I just wanted to confirm if a residents association is providing a neighborhood event, would staff see that as a community activation? We have some very active residents associations with limited budget, and oftentimes what holds them back is not having access to funds. So if they did, something in their neighborhood, would they, pending the decision of the committee that decides, be qualified for something like that?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, they would.
Thank you so much, Julie.
All righty, Councillor Shi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a question. So this objective to focus on the small scale community event. So I just want to know, so what's the idea about, so how small and how big a maximum, what kind of that event?
Through you, Mayor Burton, so the dollar value we're looking at is up to a maximum of 2,000 per activation. So quite small scale in comparison to other events and other types of funding that organizations have access to. So the intent behind this, modeling things like Burlington's Love My Hood program, it's meant to really do small scale activations for neighborhood organizations or other small ad hoc groups that have less access to formal supports.
Okay, thanks. So it's not based on the community, the event size, like 100 people, 500 people.
We didn't restrict that. It could be as small as a few neighbors. Mm-hmm. If it's a art installation or something like that, it could have a bigger audience. So we didn't want to restrict it for attendance.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, can I put the vote on all but 8.4 and 8.6? There being no objection, Madam Clerk, that motion carries. 8.4, Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. I'm identifying item 3 with respect to the Pine Glen Soccer Complex of $136,000. In reading the report, I just want to be clear on this. With the partnership and the contract, whatever we have, or memorandum of understanding, that the maintenance of that facility is under the responsibility of the Oakville Soccer Club. I just want to have clarification. Is that correct with respect to repairs and replacement and refurbishing of the facility? Just from staff, I guess.
I believe the commissioner is about to give you your answer. Ms. Sully?
Through you, Mayor Burton, it is correct. They are responsible for repairs. I was just trying to look up the amount, but it's up to $1 threshold. And what's happened is some of these repairs, as the building gets older, they're costing more, and so the town is working with them to bring it up to standard. But we are also working with them to ensure ongoing maintenance is kept up to date to minimize the impact going forward.
The $136,000, is that something that was negated by the Oakville Soccer Club with respect to having some type of plan in place with respect to repairs and maintenance of the building? Is that their main responsibility, and that's why we have an expense of $136,000 going back to the tax, to our taxes, I think.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I don't believe it's from not having a maintenance plan. They do have a maintenance plan. These are just the cost of repairs as the building is aging.
So I'm assuming then we are having our own repairs and maintenance for that building aside from our agreement with the Oakville Soccer Club. Is that correct?
Through Mayor Burton, yes, we do. And we are using the reserve fund that they contribute to make these repairs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. I believe you've succeeded in bringing out an angle here that they might have contributed some of this money to us that we're now authorizing the spending of. So it's it may be a virtuous circle. Thank you for highlighting that. Councillor Chisholm, would you be good enough to move 8.4 in the absence of any other concerns? Thank you. Is there? Pardon? Oh, am I the only one who knows that? The clerk advises that we're removing clause 4 from this recommendation. That clause said that the 2023 capital budget be amended to add a new project in the amount of $620,600 for the Bell Fiber project, fully funded from revenue recoveries from Bell. Bell has told us that they're not going to proceed with that, so we don't need to. So, Councillor Chisholm, you're still moving it. Thank you, and still nobody's objected. Councillor Elgar.
Mayor Burton, I thought on page 55 it spelled out pretty clearly why we had to put the money into the complex. Ms. Sully, they spelled out that the repairs were not being done and that the technological changes and updates to ensure the systems within buildings are maintained. Does that mean going forward that we will not be increasing what the soccer club pays annually? How long was our locked-in agreement for maintenance?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I believe it was a 20-year agreement. I'm not sure if Chris Mark is here, he would know, but I thought it was a 20-year agreement.
I remember it as a 20-year agreement. Yes, Commissioner. So, Councillor, there's no, I'm not sure there's any testimony here.
No. What I mean is, no, but my only point was what Councillor Chisholm was raising is the fact that it's now the taxpayers who will be subsidizing this, I don't think that was the idea when it was done for the 20-year deal.
What the Commissioner brought out at the end of her answer, sir, was that this is coming from a reserve that we've built up with payments from them.
Well, okay, that's not exactly how the report reads. It was things we didn't know about when we built the thing, about internet browsers and all the security systems and everything that are totally outdated. So maybe we've already built it in, okay? No worries if that's the case, it is coming from reserves and not from the taxpayer.
All righty.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lischel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could we get clarification from staff about why the upgrade in internet is not going ahead? Is that, what was the change there?
A change of mind by Bell. Director Stephen will field your question.
Thank you.
Through Mayor Burton. Yes, on Friday last week, Bell advised us that projects where they had not yet broken ground on their fiber program were being suspended for the rest of this year. We would be receiving an update from them towards the end of 2023 on what their rescheduled timeline will be for moving the project forward.
Jill, is there going to be any update to the residents of the area if they were expecting these improvements?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we will be ensuring that we provide information to Service Oakville in the event that there are questions. This is new information to us that came very late on Friday, so we are still following up with Bell on the exact communication protocol to residents, but we will ensure that we have that here and ready if we do get questions. The signs that are up in the neighborhood advising them of the program will be coming down, so we expect that that will potentially lead to some questions.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. At this point, I think I can declare 8.4 carried. Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. 8.6, Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions from the report. First of all, over 130,000 resident incidents are reported to us each year, and the target of 83% of hitting the metrics is, as the report details, is very strong. Question regarding when a case is closed. I hear from residents on a regular basis, I received a note back saying it's closed, but whatever is still, hasn't been fixed. Can you, there's a gap there. Can you help me understand that one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so we do work with staff in our partner departments when they are completing those cases. The intent is that they could close a case when the work has been done. Now, there are times where cases are closed in advance of the work being completed for a variety of reasons. For example, staff may have ordered the part that's required or scheduled the work to be completed, and then they go ahead and close the case. The resident gets the notification that it's done, sometimes without further clarification in the comments to indicate what has been happening, and they're left with wondering what is going on with that. So we do work with departments to try to get consistency in when they do indeed close their cases, which is when the work is completed. And if there are instances where it is required to close it in advance for whatever reason, to ensure that the proper notes and comments go back to the resident so they're kept aware.
So it may be, thank you for that. So it may be closed in terms of moving the issue along to the next department to fix whatever the issue is.
That is
But
correct.
until it's fixed, it's not closed fully because the work hasn't been completed.
That's correct.
Is it going to continue to be reported in that manner, or are we going to move ahead to the final closer?
Right. So that is definitely the intent even today, that it's closed when the work is actually completed. What we do is we meet with departments regularly in order to ensure that that gets completed as consistently as possible, but we do not catch every instance where that is indeed the case. Part of the upgrade to the latest version of our CRM will allow us a little bit more flexibility in terms of being able to determine when cases have been closed prior to them actually being completed. This will allow us to follow up with the departments with a little bit more data to back us up and be able to proceed from that
All right,
point on.
so it could be in progress
Correct.
until close. All right, thank you. And is there 94,000 phone calls?
Right.
That's an awful lot of phone calls. Is there any way that we can help as councillors through our communication channels? I noticed something on the town, I think it was on Facebook the other day, saying, you know, you can report it online.
Yes.
Can we help in any way in getting that out to our residents? Because they can report it morning, noon, or night, and we can deal with it as time permits. Is that something that we could assist with?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we love that. So there's going to be a new opportunity with the upgrade to the latest version of our CRM, where we're actually going to enhance the online reporting capabilities for the public. So there will be an opportunity at that point where we will be putting the message out to the public. And at that point, certainly there's an opportunity for mayor and council to parrot that message, that it is indeed a 24/7 available for our citizens to use and make use of. And they also have the capability there to follow their cases along. So as action is taken and comments are made by staff in the field, our citizens will be able to see it in real time on their cases. So it's a great feature.
Looking forward to that. And last question, I've had people express frustration saying how much data they have to provide when they sign up to report online, and they go, you know what, I'm going to send you an email, or I'm going to call the service counter, because there seems to be an awful lot of information required. Do we ask for more information than we do when a resident phones in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there is actually a project going on that's just launched, and it has to do with identity and access management. So currently with our system, we have a single sign-on for our community members. So they have one identity that they log in, and through that identity, they can access a variety of services, not just Service Oakville. So rec and culture accounts, business licensing accounts, things of that nature. But because of the way we have set it up in our current environment, we need to ask residents for their information that would be needed for downstream systems. So for example, in recreation and culture, we need their birth date for a variety of reasons for that. But we certainly don't need your birth date to report a pothole. So we're a little bit handcuffed at the moment. However, there is a project underway that will see us tackle that from a technological perspective so that residents are only giving the information that they need to get the service when they need to get that particular service. That is the intent of that.
I had that question the other day. I just want the town tree pruned. Why do they want to know how old I am? So any timeline that you can offer for that in terms of when we could, because I think we'll be able to convert more people to online requests without some of that, what they consider to be onerous information.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not in charge of that particular project. At a very high level, I'd say Q2 of 2024, there'd be some action in that.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. You've awakened comments from many members of council. Your colleague, Councillor Haslett Deal, is next.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings, for all those great questions, because I echo them. I just have two requests. I'm excited to hear the CRM is going to have greater capability. And one of the capabilities that has been brought to my attention is possibly sending a link out after you're closing, asking for someone's satisfaction level. So oftentimes in other services, people will say, so how do we do? Is it possible for that to occur and link that back to our citizen survey or data? I'm not looking to overcomplicate, but there is something to be said for, somebody pausing and saying, no, that went great, thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the system does have the capability of doing it. We haven't looked at and putting that in place for the launch, which will be in this October. However, it's something we can certainly explore and get in there. The system has the capability to do so. I'm not certain about how it would be linked to the satisfaction survey, the broader one, if that's the one you're referring to, but it's certainly something we can explore.
Okay. And my last question is, have we ever explored having Report a Problem as an app on our phones?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a period of time where we actually did have an app for Report a Problem. However, that particular company went out of business, and then we struggled to regain that. So what we've done now is through the upgrade of Oakville.ca, it is a fully responsive site. So what that means is on any device, the screen will render to make it work basically and make it look and act as an app. So that is how we're proceeding with that in order to not make people download a different piece of software in order to do so.
Well, Victor, I echo what Councillor Giddings says. Anything we can do to help people understand the progress we're making with Service Oakville and how they can perhaps get a response in a different way, in a faster way or more convenient way, we're all in. Thank you for all your hard work.
Councillor Longo, you're up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Victor, great report. Just a different question, and thank you to my council colleagues, because that was a question about resident feedback, that we can capture that, so I think that's important. One of the things that I was thinking of as you're looking at the KPIs, have you categorized the type of questions that come from residents? Because you talk about the channels in which they come, but there wasn't anything, and maybe I've missed it, but there wasn't anything about, well, what were the questions that came forward? Can you categorize them by department to see, are these recurring issues? Or are there issues that are being resolved one time and they're just kind of general and they'll always happen, parks, tree trimming, whatever it may be, but just to see if we can get any trends going?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we do have extensive reporting. We can get quite granular in terms of the kinds of inquiries that are coming through Service Oakville. So much to your point that you hit on there, we track the calls that are one and done, is what we refer to in Service Oakville, in that we get an inquiry, we're able to respond and answer the question, and then the client leaves satisfied, the citizen leaves satisfied. We also have cases where it needs to be entered as a service request to the downstream department in order to get actual work done. we have hundreds of different kinds of cases, and we can report on all of them. We have different trends that we see over time, over days of the week, over seasons. We have seasonality of different questions. We get influx of questions when tax bills go out and all these other types of registration dates for rec and culture. So we built a pretty good calendar in terms of when to expect certain things, but we're also able to respond and track the unexpected. So when there's flooding events and things of those nature, we're able to track those separately as well.
So it might be interesting, to, I guess, to anticipate some of the questions that might be coming around tax time and things like that, to proactively try and communicate, because that information might be really useful. So I think you're already on that, but I just wanted to state it. So anyway, great job. Thank you.
And now, Councillor O'Meara.
Sorry, thank you, Worship. You know, I know it's very, it's not right for councillors to get so far in the weeds, but it would be very interesting to just spend an afternoon and see how it all flows, because it helps us better understand that. So, for example, I had somebody who, there was dumping in a park and they called Service Oakville. I relayed it on for them. Case was closed, and they literally went in the backyard and they say, but it's still there. How come I got an email saying it's closed? So I guess what I'm trying to follow the bouncing ball is, our Service Oakville, our sales team, they open a case, they send a request to Parks and Rec or Operation or something like that. Then how does that Park and Rec's individual notify the computer? Do they have a tablet, and once they've done it, they hit done, and then it all wraps it up? Or how does that get back to where it says it's closed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So you're right in describing that whole instance where the call comes in Service Oakville, we enter the request, it goes down to the department, the downstream department. This is where the partnership comes into play. So we do rely on the department to, when they complete the work, also update the system in order to have it flow back. So right now, our system at Service Oakville is integrated with the computer system or application, however you want to refer to it, of the system that the downstream people use. So when they're just working in their world, in their application, so the work that they do, whether it's through a tablet or back at the office or even bringing in paper, I'm not certain exactly what their process is in order to have it updated. Once that's completed in their system, it flows back up into Salesforce, which then or our CRM, which then closes the case and closes the loop.
Okay, so then again, I'm just you know, trying to understand that. How could the people who said that it's been, how could an email be sent saying that the pile of garbage has been cleaned up out of the park when it wasn't? Because that technically it would be the person who had to physically go there and do this stuff and then come back and say it's now complete. So how does that gap happen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't really have an answer to how that happens. If there could be a variety of reasons, as I was mentioning, I believe in one of the first questions, where if an employee thinks that it's closed from their perspective because they know they're going to get it done, and then something comes up and they don't complete it, that's certainly a possibility. There could be a variety of reasons, but certainly the intent is that it's done, that's when it's closed.
And are we aiming to have it fully automated? Like you said, sometimes maybe they have a piece of, you know, they write it down or something. Are we aiming to have all of this sort of in the truck? There's the computer, there's the tablet, kind of, you know, like, and I know it's a bad analogy, even Councillor Noel would like it if I was here, but when the police go and they report something, they go and spend 5 minutes after, they enter the codes, they do it all, boom, it's all uploaded, and the officer, the person who did it has uploaded all that data, and that is how the loop gets closed. It doesn't really leave a lot of room for, I'll do it when I get back to the office, I'll this or that, because it's all sort of in real time happening. Are we aiming to try and get there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do believe that is the intent town-wide of having more automation. Oh, here it comes.
And Victor is perfectly right. That is the requirement. And just to give you an example, it could have been that inquiry came in about garbage that needs to be picked up in the park. A work order would have gone out automatically on the tablets. It would have been received. And then a person on staff would have been carrying out that work order requirement. So perhaps the staff person might have, once they did the work order, they know it's going to be closed, they close the file, but the person who was actually picking it up hadn't quite arrived yet. So that's a great example where that's the disconnect we're just trying to close. But it's also a great example of the online system that we currently have with our tablets and the various ways we communicate through Service Oakville into each one of the departments and their systems.
Yeah, perfect. No, thank you. And you guys are doing great jobs. Again, I don't want to get my fingers in the soup at all, but it'd be great to sort of see how that works one day, because it helps me explain to residents when they email back and says, what do you mean this is going on? And then we can sort of explain a little bit more, but thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Nanda, welcome to the fray.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is just going into what Councilor O'Meara said. Just one quick clarification, and I don't want to duplicate what he said. One of our understandings, because we've had several of these cases where the case was closed and they came back to us, and then we were explained that if it goes to Service Oakville, they produce a ticket, and then once they've given it to a department, they close their ticket and a new ticket is issued. And that's the reason why the resident gets the initial closed ticket, because now Service Oakville has done their part and then sent it over to the correct department, and then they've issued their own ticket. So do you want to clarify that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see the details of that, because that's not how it works. Certainly, when there's an integration with the system, a ticket number from the downstream system is created, but both stay open. So the downstream system ticket stays open, as does Service Oakville. That's how they talk to each other, so that when it's closed in the downstream and the work is completed, it updates the subsequent case within the Service Oakville world, so that we're able to communicate it out to the citizen. So it shouldn't be where this is closed while
So
something
that
else
might
is
need
open.
to be clarified. That's happened on a couple of instances.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I am aware of that situation. When you have multiple requests come in through one, they divide those requests out. Some get closed, and you get all these very confusing notifications from the residents' point of view. They're left not really understanding what's going on. We do intend with the new system, and we do want to show the councillors how that system is going to work for the residents, so you can visualize how the residents are going to use the system. There should be a fix to that. When you have a multiple component complaint that has to be split out across multiple departments, the complex ones are trickier to handle right now, but we do have improvements for that in the future. Okay.
And Councillor Elgar.
Thank you, through Mayor Burton. The 83% that we're recording right now, what is the real number? What do you think the real number is based on true completion, where the resident looks out and say, yes, they did pick up that garbage? Like how far off are we? Are we 70% now? 75?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would think that we're pretty close to that, just because of that 83% that we listed here. It's difficult because we do deal with a large volume of cases, and certainly there are, when something breaks down or those cases don't quite work the way that they're supposed to, or complaints come through, they do represent a smaller slice of the overall pie. However, that's the piece of the pie that we hear about. So it seems to be more often than is the case. But what the data shows is that we're hitting the mark more often than we're not. So I would suspect if it was wildly out of whack, we'd be hearing a lot more complaints than we're already doing, personally.
Okay, so now from what I can read, this new system is going to be in 2024. Do we have any idea when in 2024? Are we talking January or December?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so 2 points of clarification there, or a point of clarification there. So the 2024 has to do with the identity management piece. So that's the sign-in portion for a customer. The new system that gives enhanced capabilities for the CRM system to be able to better track multiple requests, to better report on various matters, to increase the number of cases available to people online, that's coming in October of this year, 2023.
Excellent. Appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody, for troubleshooting this automobile. I'd like to take a pass also. Is it possible that we could design the system so that Service Oakville would never tell a customer it was done until Service Oakville had received confirmation from the doer that it was done? And as a bonus, would it be possible to tell the customer what was done? I myself got one of these complaints earlier this week where the resident wanted to know what exactly was done. They accepted that the problem had been fixed, but they wanted to know how. And I thought that was a reasonable question. And if we introduced a checking loop for Service Oakville where you don't tell the resident it's done until you know it's done, we'd get rid of this, I gather 83% leaves 17%, presumably not yet done or something, but can we improve this system?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we can always improve. That's for sure. It's just a matter of getting a deeper dive, working with our business partners, and I believe this council meeting would help us in that regard to underline the importance of just how much our customers want that information. So to be able to help drive that behavior that we're looking for. It's important to note that a lot of these individuals in the field, putting in the notes is not necessarily their primary job. Their primary job is getting the tree, cutting the tree, doing it is what they need to do. So I can appreciate that sometimes the comments fall by the wayside, but by being able to illustrate and underline the importance of how that really helps the entire customer experience when people are aware of what's happening with their case and we're communicating with them consistently and all the way through the life cycle, it cuts down on repeat calls, it cuts down on complaints, and it cuts down on people trying to find out what's going on with their particular case. So it does help everyone.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to conclude from your answer that you'll take all of this as gentle guidance from council on how to improve.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely.
Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing how it goes. Council, let's see now. I need to ask Councillor Giddings if he'll move receipt of the 8.6 item, and I need to ask Council if there's any objection to receiving it. I see no objection. That's Councillor Giddings' motion is carried. That brings us to our 4 discussion items, and we have presentations and I believe a lot of interest from delegations. So we're going to start off with 10.1, the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program Update Staff Report. And Mohammed Imran, the Manager of Neighborhood Traffic Safety, is up, and he'll be backed up by the directors, Jill Stephen. Mr. Imran, we are all ears.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and council members. I'm pleased to provide an annual update on the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program. This presentation provides a summary of the work completed so far in 2023, the work which is ongoing projects that will be completed by end of this year, the planned work for 2024, and the budget request for each component of the program. Next slide, please. Next slide. So first of all, I will provide the historical context of the 40 km/h speed limit implementation on local and minor collector roads in the town, and the assessment results of the 3 40 area pilots. Council endorsed the implementation of 40 km/h speed limit on all local and minor collector roads in January 2021, and directed staff to report back with the implementation plan. In October 2021, Council deferred the implementation and directed staff to monitor 3 pilots in Lakeshore Wood neighborhood, Heritage Way, and West River, and report back with the assessment results. We collected the speed data at 44 locations in these 3 pilots over 4 seasons from spring 2022 to spring 2023. And this data was used to assess speed limit compliance and changes in driver behavior. Staff compared the speed studies conducted before implementing these pilots with the speed data collected in different seasons. These comparisons are provided in Appendix A of the staff report. Speed reduction was observed in some streets, but overall, slight decrease in operating speed was observed in West River, and a slight increase in operating speed was observed in the remaining two Heritage Way and Lake Sherwood neighborhood. These results show a minor impact on operating speeds and demonstrate that lowering the posted speed to 40 km/h is not effective in changing driver behavior. So based on these results, staff do not recommend lowering the posted speed to 40 km/h on local and minor collector roads. If council desires to implement 40 km/h speed limit on local and minor collector roads, so there are two options presented in the council report. Staff recommends adopting a 40 km/h neighborhood approach, shown as option 1 in the council report, in the Appendix B of the staff report. This approach is consistent with the Highway Traffic Act and Ontario traffic manuals. With this option, entire town is divided into 72 zones, and the zone boundaries are determined by the major collector and arterial roads. The 40 km/h area signs will be installed at each entry point to for all zones. So this can be implemented more quickly, more cost effectively, and as compared to the other option B, which requires installing 40 km/h signs on each street. If 40 km/h speed limit is implemented on town roads, staff do not recommend reducing the posted speed in school zone to 30 km/h, because there are ongoing and planned safety programs like ASC, traffic calming, speed display signs to encourage speed compliance in school zones. The cost estimates for both options are included in the staff report. The 2024 budget does not include these funds. If council desires to proceed with the 40 km/h speed limit implementation, utilizing option 1, the amount of $251,000 will need to be referred to the budget deliberations. Next slide, please. Traffic calming program. The current 5-step traffic calming process was introduced in 2022. It requires a resident petition to start the traffic calming process, followed by traffic calming survey, speed studies, another traffic calming survey, and design and implementation. Staff reviewed the process based on the survey responses and petitions received since 2022. Results of 32 traffic calming surveys show that average response to the traffic calming surveys was 34%, and majority of the residents are supporting the traffic calming. It was observed that most of the streets do not proceed to the next stage of traffic calming due to lack of response to the traffic calming surveys. We also observed that a large petition area from 50 to 100 households was a hindrance for a single resident to pursue. So therefore, in the revised process, the petition area will be fairly small, from 10 to 20 households. The traffic calming survey following the resident petition is being eliminated. And now with the revised process, speed studies will be conducted after receiving the petition. We also observed that 84% of the location failed to proceed to the next stage due to less than 50% responses to the traffic calming surveys. Therefore, we are recommending to lower the response rate threshold to 30%, with the support threshold still at being at 50%. Next slide, please. As a result of these process changes, these 6 streets are proceeding to the design and public consultation stage. These roads had 30% or more responses to traffic calming surveys and had more than 50% support for traffic calming. We will start design in 2024 and consult with the residents on the proposed designs. If they meet the required response rate and support threshold, traffic calming will be implemented in 2024. 14 streets shown in Appendix C of the staff report are proceeding to the speed studies due to elimination of the traffic calming survey before speed studies. So speed studies will be conducted on these 14 streets in fall 2023. Watson Avenue and Spruce Street, they passed the traffic calming sport threshold, but they failed to meet the speed threshold after the speed studies. If council selects to approve implementation of 40 km/h speed limit on local and minor collector roads, these two streets will meet the speed thresholds and will proceed to the design and public consultation in 2024. Next slide, please. We are implementing traffic calming in 3 school zones on Heritage Way and 16 Mile this year. The contract is in the award process and construction will start in upcoming weeks with the expected completion by end of this year. In 2024, traffic calming will be implemented at 4 school zones on 60 Mile Drive, Notting Hill Gate, 4th Line, and Valley Ridge Drive. We are requesting $1.8 million for traffic calming initiatives in 2024 budget. Next slide, please. Automated speed enforcement is a provincially regulated program. It requires town to enter into agreements with Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Attorney General, and Joint Processing Center to be able to issue ASC tickets and conduct screening and adjudications of the disputed ASC tickets. Staff is working with Ontario Privacy and Information Commission to complete the privacy impact assessment of our facility, which is a requirement to be completed before signing the MTO agreement. It will be completed by end of this year. We are expecting to sign the agreements with Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Attorney General by end of 2023, complete the required system upgrades by end of Q1 2024, and launch the ASC program in Q2 2024. This table provides details about the estimated ASC budget. In 2023 operating budget, we had over $1 million allocated for ASC program. We are unable to launch the ASC program this year, so these funds are not used. The Joint Processing Center has recently increased its capacity to process the ASC charges. In 2024 budget, the estimate is based on 26,700 charges. The estimated overall cost for the program is over $2 million. It also includes $150,000 for additional staffing resources, which is still to be considered as part of budget process. The forecasted 2025 budget for ASC program is also included in this table and the staff report, which is based on first full year of operational ASC program. Next slide, please. So this year, installation of 20 PXOs was completed in June, and another construction for another 20 PXOs is in progress. It will be completed in fall. Next year, we will add 28 PXOs to the road network. As part of PXO installation program, we are installing 15 PXOs and 12 PXOs as part of Crosstown Heritage Trail construction. And 1 PXO will be added on Allen Street as part of Wallace Park improvement project. In 2024, we are also starting reviewing the illumination levels at our existing PXOs. So lighting analysis and design for 40 existing PXOs is planned for 2024, and installation of streetlight fixture will be completed based on 5 locations per year in the coming years. The budget request of $1.8 million for PSO program is included in the 2024 budget. Next slide, please. This year, we assessed 8 intersections for always stop implementation so far, and 14 assessments will be done based on the fall traffic counts. Implementation of always stop at Berryer and Johns Street is in progress and will be completed by end of September. We are also installing always stops at North Park and Sunflower Drive, Central Park and Georgian, and Preserve Drive and Cherryhurst Road. At these intersections, stop signs will be installed in fall, and concrete work for accessible curbs will be completed next year. This year, we implemented southbound advanced left turn at phase at Green Ridge and 3rd Line, and southbound advanced left turn phase at Dorville and Rebecca Street is also warranted, which will be installed next year. We implemented 3 LPI, leading pedestrian interval, at 3 intersections on Lakeshore Road, and 2 intersections on 6th Line will also be programmed with LPI in fall. The pedestrian detection software pilot in downtown Oakville has been successful. So next year, we will select additional intersections having video detection and high pedestrian activity for installation of this software. This year, we have implemented 5 community safety zones, which were warranted last year. Additional road segments will be assessed based on the fall traffic counts, and they will be implemented next year. And staff will report back to council through the 2024 Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program with the evaluation result of 2023 requests. Next slide, please. Construction of 2 pedestrian signals at Oak Park Boulevard and Ontario Street is starting in first week of October and expected to be completed by end of this year. And next year, 2024, we will install a pedestrian signal at Third Line and Greenridge. And the construction contract for 2 traffic signals at Rebecca Street and Brock Street and Third Line and Sobe Plaza is in procurement process. And expected completion is by end of 2023. In 2024 budget, 1.1 million is requested for traffic calming installation at Glen Ashton Drive and Caldwell Drive and Dundas Street and Taunton Road. Traffic signal optimization. So in 2024, we are installing SPM at 19 signalized intersections along Rebecca Street. So SPM is a cloud-based system that collects real-time traffic data and enables staff to respond quickly to the changing traffic patterns to optimize traffic flow. The budget request of $300,000 is included in the 2024 budget for SPM implementation. We are adding a new safety initiative in 2024 program to enhance safe mobility for road users. Starting from 2024, we will complete in-service road safety review for 1 intersection and 1 mid-block segment, and any recommended safety treatments will be implemented in the following years. In 2024, as part of intersection improvements, we will also add a left turn lane on Progress Court at its intersection with North Service Road. The 2024 budget request for intersection improvements and safety reviews is $340,000. Next slide, please. An RFP for acquiring a safety analysis software was released early this year. This RFP was not awarded and was canceled because the submissions were well over budget. Now we are pursuing to achieve this capability by acquiring a cloud-based platform recently introduced by our currently used traffic engineering software vendor. This software has undergone significant upgrades, and its cloud-based platform has similar capabilities to the analysis software that we intended to acquire through the RFP process. Staff is working with the vendor to upgrade to the cloud-based platform, and traffic data migration to Test Cloud is expected to be completed by end of November. In 2023, we continued with the pedestrian and traffic safety campaign using transit shelter ads and providing communication updates on the town website. We will continue with this education campaign in 2024. Next year's communication plan also includes a comprehensive communication campaign at the time of ASC program launch, which will include updates to the town website, media releases, and communication with school boards and resident associations. Traffic studies like noise impact assessment and safety reviews are conducted resulting from resident inquiries. In 2023, we conducted noise impact studies on Dorville Drive, Third Line, and Lakeshore Road West. Next year, we will conduct a safety review study of Loyalist Trail neighborhood to mitigate the residents' concerns about truck traffic using the residential streets. The budget for request for traffic studies and reactive safety assessments is $125,000. And we are also conducting a review of our traffic bylaw, which is in progress. The expected completion is the last quarter of 2023, and we'll report back to council in Q1 2024. Next slide, please. This slide explains the component-wise breakdown of 2024 capital budget for neighborhood traffic safety program and 2024 operating budget for ASC program. The total capital budget request for neighborhood traffic safety program is $6.1 million. The requested 2024 ASC budget is over $2 million, which also includes $150,000 for additional staffing resources, which is still to be considered in the budget process. Next slide, please. Staff recommends continued implementation of neighborhood traffic safety program to be considered as part of 2024 budget and prioritized along with the other known budget pressures. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be pleased to answer any questions that member of council may have.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Imran, and Councillor O'Meara will oblige you with at least one question. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would like to put a motion on the table to pursue option 1 as written on page 94. I know I'm jumping the gun, but I think it's time that option had its day and we have that conversation here. So I can read it out, but it is on page 94 of the staff report. That 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit be implemented on all local and minor collected roads by posting speed limit signs at all entry-exit points of the neighborhoods. And the required capital budget of $251,000 will need to be considered as part of the 2024 budget. Is that appropriate at this time?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have a few questions, and then I wouldn't mind speaking to it after my council colleagues have had a turn at it. But I didn't see in the report, Imran, thank you very much. And as a comprehensive report, there's a lot in there, and you guys have to be one of the busier departments in this town because it's the calls keep coming in. I know that. Part of the motion that we moved in 2021 also stated that the implementation of the pilot project was to be done in conjunction with a comprehensive education program working with the Halton Regional Police and any other complementary measures deemed necessary. I don't see anything in this report about the communications program, the comprehensive education program that was undertaken, and I don't see anything about the work that we did with the Halton Regional Police over the pilot project time periods. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So, Councillor Mayor, in June, this year, June, we had sent out letters, reminder letters to all the households in these 3 neighborhoods, reminding them that the streets, all of the streets in their neighborhood, or in that particular neighborhood has a speed of 40 kilometers per hour. And we did speed studies right after sending that letter, after 2 weeks of sending that letter, but there was no result. And police has been enforcing in all these 3 neighborhoods. Like we had some stats from July 1, 2022 to July 1, 2023 from police. In Heritage Way, they issued 66 tickets and 84 warnings. In West River, they issued 76 tickets and 116 warnings. And Lakeshore Woods, they issued 20 tickets and 48 warnings. These are stop sign non-compliance. These are about speeding, careless driving, and all moving violations.
So those aren't only just related to speeding. How many violations of speeding specifically of over 50 kilometers an hour did the Halton Regional Police issue?
They issued 27 speeding tickets and 10 warnings in Heritage Way neighborhood, and they issued 11 tickets and 3 warnings in West River. And Lakeshore Woods, they issued majority of 10 and 29. They were for stop sign non-compliance. No speeding in Lakeshore Woods.
Okay, for example, the one in Lakeshore, you said 10 tickets and 29 warnings.
29 warnings
for speeding.
Non-compliance of stop sign.
For non-compliance of what, sorry?
Stop signs.
Okay, I'm just trying to get to this. This is kind of about the speeding issue, though, not necessarily going through the stop sign. So I'm trying to just isolate how many tickets were given of people going 50 to 55 kilometers an hour when they should have been going 40 kilometers an hour during our pilot project.
And Lakeshore Woods, two tickets.
2 tickets?
2 tickets, yeah.
So that kind of is making me, if we didn't have the results we wanted to see, but police issued 2 tickets in one area, I'm kind of trying to understand the disconnect here of how we got there. So anyway, I didn't see any of that information in the report, and I could have digested it a little more and spoke to, but I wasn't sure because I didn't see those numbers. But Anyway, so I'm going to park that for a minute. That's great. I do have a question about just the traffic calming program. And again, you guys have been fantastic when we've been trying to knock on doors and get people to answer the response surveys. Are we worried that to lowering the threshold to 30%, that will open us up to the other side saying, you don't even have a majority on the street who want this, and how dare you go ahead when half the people in the street, I mean, are we opening ourselves up to that? There's always a counter group who might form. I mean, how are we going to position ourselves on that one?
Through you, Mayor Burton, what we have observed in the traffic calming surveys, 34%, like 34% average response that we are getting. Like majority of the residents, like they are not responding to the traffic calming survey. So the once they respond, majority is always in the favor of traffic calming. So.
Through Mr. Mayor, the process that we change into is that we want to ensure safety first. So we will be doing the speed survey after that initial petition is past 30%. However, once we've done the speed survey, of course, if it doesn't qualify, it ends there. And once it passes the qualification for the speed threshold, we will do the design and we will go out for a formal consultation at that time. So then people could actually see what will be implemented. It's often hard to ask for a survey, someone to answer a survey when they don't know what it is. So I think it will be a better position to provide that design for that street so everyone could actually reply to say, well, we really don't want that or we do want that. So even though we lower the threshold to 30%, we want to ensure safety's first. Once the threshold's met for speed, we want to ensure that we're out there to look at the options for the street.
Okay, because it seems like we might be circling back to our original approach to this, where any councillor could say, hey, we've got a request for a speed survey on this street. Can you do a speed survey? If it was found that there was speeding, then we would start to move forward with the traffic calming procedure. We changed where we were allowing residents on their street to petition their street, whether the speed surveys were working or not. And they could ask their neighbors if that's what they wanted. But it sounds like this might be reverting back to if we do a speed study and we find vehicles are going at whatever the warrant says, say 60 kilometers an hour and the warrant's 61, then that's the end of the discussion on traffic calming then. Are we going back to that then?
Oh, actually, it's quite opposite. We did put in a number of filters. So first of all, the petition still exists. So the person still need to knock on 10, 20 immediate neighbors' doors. If he doesn't receive that amount of petition, then there is no process to go further forward. The second gate, which is very opposite to what we used to be, where as soon as we meet the speed survey, we go out and design and construct. No, we will go out for a formal survey with the design. And at that time, those people who really doesn't like that would likely respond. So you really trying to entice those. Right now, everyone who responds are generally positive because they really want it. And the people who are silent, they're thinking, well, it's probably never gonna happen because they're not opposed of it. However, when you show a street or a neighborhood a full design, and if there are people that's really not liking it and they really think it's not appropriate, they will respond. So we're not too concerned with the 30% lower threshold because when they see that design, people could react to it.
Okay. No, and they will. I know.
They will.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So we didn't eliminate that last survey. That last survey is crucial with the design in hand. And at that time, the neighborhood is not just 20 houses, it will be the full neighborhood. It will go back to that 50 to 100 area to make sure all the people who have to use that street have a say.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship. That's all the questions I have at this time.
Councilor O'Meara, just to help me out here, may I assume that your motion is in full, that the continued implementation of the Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program be considered as part of the 2024 budget and prioritized along with other known budget pressures, and that Council adopt the option 1 on page 94 that you quoted? Thank you very much. I can work with that. Councillor Elgar, Councillor Grant, Councillor Lischina, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Elgar, you're first.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. I can't really support the option 1. I'm convinced now that the only method we are going to control speeds in Oakville is to have automated speed enforcement. And in the near future, I'm hoping we are also able to add a decibel meter for the noisy mufflers in the town. It's becoming a huge issue, speeding and noise that have decibels way beyond the level there should be. I'm concerned that it's taking so long to get the automated speed enforcement installed, and also that we're losing revenue for the first couple of years until 2025. And is there any way, I would like to know, can we speed that up?
Through you, Mayor Burton. As I explained, like it's a provincially regulated program. We are waiting for the province to sign those agreements with the province, with Ministry of Attorney General, Ministry of Transportation. So we can only proceed forward after that. We cannot install the cameras at our own. We have to follow the Ontario regulation to operate the cameras. So that's the hold up. We are waiting for that to be, those agreements to be signed, and we are hoping to install activate the cameras in Q2 2024.
Through you, Mayor Burton, if I may just supplement that as well. I would like to just make sure that council is aware that we have made arrangements with the vendor already for the cameras to ensure that our readiness, we're at as high a state of readiness as we can be for implementing the program. So the cameras are on order, but we're not yet paying for them because we aren't able to deploy them. But they are ready for us, and we will have them within 3 months of letting the vendor know that we're ready to get started. That 3-month lines up very nicely with the fact that we need to post coming soon signs for 90 days in advance of the first deployment of the cameras, and in advance of any of the rotation of the cameras as well, to let drivers know that they will be entering a zone where there is automated speed enforcement. So that is all in place. Implementing the automated speed enforcement under the administrative penalties system allows us to have more control over the enforcement process, the ticket management process, and our municipal enforcement group has done so much work in making sure that we have a very well advanced and robust administrative penalties system here, AMP system, that puts us really in good stead for when we are able to issue tickets and for that ticket management. And we expect that we will be the first municipality in Ontario who's able to release and start our program under the administrative penalties system.
I would like to thank staff for pushing this as far as they have, but you mentioned 90 days to post that we're going to have a camera. Can we do anything about that? Like, can we lobby the province that we will decide where to put a camera? Maybe councillors should have a trailer hitch on their car to pull them around. But seriously, 90 days, you know, people shouldn't need 90 days. They know the speed limit is 50.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the 90 days is part of the regulations for automated speed enforcement, so it has to happen no matter what. All the communities are required to do that as well. So every time we are about to move a camera, we need to give drivers 90 days notice that they will be entering a zone that has has automated speed enforcement. We have done the pre-work to get all the community safety zones in place, so that is established. But we need those agreements in order to actually launch the program.
So to change that, we'd probably have to get the residents to start lobbying their MPPs to get legislation changed, because we can't do that. Well, I thank you for what you're doing. I'm all in favor of the automated speed enforcement. I'm convinced it's the only thing that's going to make people slow down is when it hits their pocketbooks. But I do like what you've done at the schools, and it does seem to be working. I think you've done a great job, and I'm glad to hear we might be the first community to get the automated speed enforcement on track and going. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mayor Burton.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Speaking specifically to the 40 kilometers per hour, as with 2021, I have a problem supporting the idea. There's a difference between, and I said this at the time, a difference between actually promoting safety and promoting the idea of safety. And we've now seen from the staff's own report that this is actually not promoting safety at all. It's just something that's sort of to comfort us at night. But what isn't comforting is that $250,000 is a pretty hard placebo to swallow when we've been asking everybody else to watch their own budgets, and when we've got at least 8 excellent tools, thank you very much to our staff, that we can use to continue to try and stop people from speeding. So Yeah, I can't support the 40 kilometers an hour once again.
Righty, Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, I'm on record from day one not supporting this. And this time around, we're actually the 40-kilometer town-wide. This time, we're actually going against our own town-specific robust evidence of 3 neighborhoods, 44 locations, full year data. I agree with the previous speakers just now. I think community safety zones are an important area to cover, which when we talk about safety, that is where that money should be going. And so I will not be supporting that motion again. Thank you.
Councillor Chisholm, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not in support of the 40-kilometer mile hour zoning either, but I'm grateful for what we've done in our safety zones, which has made some impact. I agree with Councillor with respect to the ACE program. ASCS, that's the E program. For sure, I think that's going to really help the slow down speeding, traffic, and so forth. My question is to staff with respect to one of the recommendations they're making to reduce it on the petition to 30% rather than 50%. I know we've had some petitions that come through have not made that threshold to 50%. Do they, if we approve this report, would they have the opportunity to come back and to do the petition again, knowing full well it's now at 30% rather than 50%?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So, we have already included the streets which already had more than 50% responses. We are already doing the speed studies. But if any specific street, we can review that, what was the response percentage, and we can deal with that based on that.
So what I'm hearing, you will review that one if the report's approved, that I could go back to one of the residents' petitions specifically on Southview to resubmit their petition based on the new 30% threshold. Is that correct?
Southview had very low response rate, I believe. I can check. I can get back to you by looking at the report. It's included in the report, but I don't remember off my head.
No, we're going back and forth. I understand they didn't meet the threshold. They were close, but didn't reach it. What I'm suggesting, can they resubmit now, knowing you're changing it to 30%?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Burton, certainly they can resubmit. We've just checked. We had 21% response rate, but if they redo the survey and are able to hit that 30% threshold, then yes, of course, we would consider it and move it on to the next stage.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
All righty, Councillor McNeice, and then Councillor Nanda, and then Councillor Adams, at which point almost everybody will have gone, and we can come back to Councillor O'Meara, unless there are more first-timers. Councillor McNeice.
Through your worship, I am in favor of the motion. I believe one of the principles of Vision Zero is safety over speed. And if you even try to drive 50 kilometers per hour in some of these neighborhoods, it just feels not safe. And some of the research shows by dropping the speed limit by 10 kilometers, pedestrian safety increases by double, and that's pedestrian fatalities. So I believe it's not just a road safety issue, it's a public health thing and making sure that our communities and neighborhoods are safe. So I'm in support of that. A couple of other questions. As far as the schools go in the safety, traffic calming in front of schools, my understanding was that St. Mary's at Colonel William Parkway and Stockbridge Avenue was going to be one of them, as well as Palermo School. Is that, I don't see them on the list, but has something changed?
Through you, Mayor Burton. The school on Valley Ridge Drive is on the next year. Is on the next year's list. And traffic calming will be implemented in front of on Valley Ridge next year.
So I'm talking about St. Mary's Catholic Elementary School on Colonel William Parkway and Stockbridge Avenue. I don't see it on the list at all for this year or next year.
Through you, Mayor Burton, it's on the list of those 20 locations. I can get back to you like what priority it is, but it is on the list.
So on the list means it would be
For
next year,
not for next year,
2024?
not for next year, not for,
Would be
it
2025.
could be 2025 or 26, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay. And then as far as the leading pedestrian interval implementation, I know there's two, the advanced pedestrian signal, there's two that were put in place in Bronte at two of the intersections. In downtown, the pedestrian detection software, they did it for the whole BIA area, essentially, the whole downtown. I think they're great. I just find it confusing when two of the intersections have it and two of them don't. Is it complicated or cost prohibitive to have our 4 intersections in the business area to have the advanced green for pedestrians?
Through you, Mayor Burton. Now Bronte areas, all 5 signals, in fact, 4 in Bronte Village and 1 Mississauga Street, all of them have leading pedestrian interval installed.
Oh, so all of them have it?
Yep.
So I only see 2 listed in the report.
We installed 2 this year, we installed 2 last year.
Okay, I'll keep my eye out for it. Thank you. That's it for me.
It's always good when we make somebody happy. Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you so much for the report. I do want to say that the amount of advocating Councillor Chi and I have done, your team has really done a tremendous job in listening to our residents and working hard for them. And we appreciate even the recent approval of the new 4-way stop sign, which was a really big issue in our area. So thank you for that as well. In regards to the 40-kilometer speed, would it be possible, or has there been any study or anything done to implement it only in certain areas, or is this an all or nothing? If we want to go ahead with this option, it would have to be all local and minor collector roads, or could this be done the way we do traffic studies on a needs basis, like how we have it in the community safety zones?
Through you, Mayor Burton, the report today provides 2 options to implement that lower speed limit on all minor collectors and local roads townwide. That was the direction that was provided in 2021, so we are responding to that. If council wished to look at a different option of looking at smaller areas or setting criteria for us to report back on with recommendations for smaller neighborhoods or individual roads, we would need to report back on that, what those are recommended criteria for lowering the speed limits on individual roads would be.
Okay, so I could look at council if that's an option that council colleagues want, if we don't want to implement it on all local and minor collector roads.
Thank you, Councillor Nanda, for highlighting that opportunity. Next is Councillor Adams. If Councillor Nanda...
Thanks very much. I just wanted to double check, first of all, that you would call a separate vote on the issue of having the 40-kilometer-hour limits imposed everywhere.
Yes, our parliamentary procedure in this situation is to separate the item and have a vote on each piece.
Excellent, thank you very much. So I support much of the work that the staff are doing, but I do not support the imposition of the 40-kilometer-hour across all of our neighborhoods. The data that we've collected, in fact, shows that 2/3 of the times actually increase the speed. So if you want to make it safer for people, increasing the speed at which a collision would happen with a pedestrian doesn't seem like a way to do it. So I definitely don't support that motion, but I support a lot of the work that our staff are doing, including the ASC program, and I appreciate the work they've done to change our traffic calming process as well. I think the change in the survey process would be a great improvement. Thanks.
Councillor Hazlitt-Thiel, and then Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. This is a really thorny issue for a lot of residents who have been hoping that 40 kilometers would come along, because it would allow them to then therefore qualify for traffic calming. So we have several streets where they hit 55, not 56, but if they were in a 40 kilometer, they would qualify for traffic calming. And so clearly they're frustrated because the system is not giving them tools to slow down their street. Though I take it that the data is not supporting in our town that people slow down if you change the sign. Can you tell me externally, when you drive in other Burlington, you drive in other jurisdictions, they are going to reduce speed. So from a broader perspective, are they seeing success with the reduction of the speed limits?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we had stats. Mississauga has implemented 40 areas throughout the city, and the stats we had from Mississauga is they had a reduction of 1.2 kilometer per hour.
Okay, so they're experiencing what our data
They are
is showing.
experiencing the same.
Okay. So basically, people just thumb their nose at the speed limits. Okay, so a couple of other questions just related to traffic in general. First, thank you for acknowledging that the petition range is needed. I had a few really great soldiers out there, and they did the hard work, but it really was asking too much. So I think going to the 10 to 20 signatures is helpful. I want to clarify, if this fall they got 10 to 20 signatures, would that put them in the quay for next season to have their speed surveys done?
Through you, Mayor Burton, if we receive the requested fall, we'll do the speed studies in spring.
Okay.
Because our fall list is already full. We have a lot of studies to do.
So thank you. So, but it would be done next season?
Next season.
Okay, so thank you for that. We have flashing speed signs that are in different parts of the town. Do they collect speed data?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, they do collect speed data.
So we go to some effort to put down different technology to assess speed, but these flashing signs are actually could tell us what the road speed levels are. Is that right?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, that's correct. The speed display radar, speed display signs, they can tell us what the speed is. They collect speed for every vehicle that passes by.
So does it generate a report for you so you could say Ford Drive, the average speed is?
Yes, it generates a report for us.
So from a proactive perspective, how often is that data reviewed? And how often are we allowed to rotate that as an additional resource to get data to say whether or not we have a problem or not?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we can generate the reports anytime. It can weekly reports, monthly reports, but it's not an enforcement tool. It's just a driver feedback sign just to give them feedback they are going at a higher than posted speed.
Okay, so I get that it's telling me whether or not I'm at 52 or 54, not that I am at 52 or 54. But is it actually generating a report that you as staff could say, we have a road that on average is exceeding the warrant and therefore it should have traffic calming on it?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, it can generate a report.
Okay. So Jill's standing behind you, so Jill, you know where I'm going. Do you do anything with that report?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we use those signs primarily on major collectors and minor arterials, and we rotate them about every 9 to 12 months because those roads we don't do physical traffic calming on in terms of speed cushions or other things like that. Now that we've gone to a cloud-based system with this data, we are able to download and use that information more regularly. When we first initiated them, they were really more of an education tool at the time as you were driving past them, telling you what the speed was. And we would do speed surveys with the old tubes before we put the sign up, after the sign was up, and after to check to see if there was any change in behavior as a result of having these speed signs up. I believe it was part of the 2021 program when we talked last about the use of these signs and that we would limit them to the major collectors and minor arterials as an education tool. We have not purchased extra ones where we could rotate them to locals or minor collectors as a sort of ongoing data collection tool to see whether we were hitting traffic calming thresholds. We're still using, we're not using the tubes anymore, but we still are doing those 48-hour speed surveys to determine whether or not we're meeting the threshold to move on to the next level.
And not to go too far in the weeds, are we still averaging the data? So looking across the entire time period and averaging it, or are we looking at, where we clearly have spikes that are exceeding the warrant and assessing whether or not that's enough justification to say it's time we should put traffic calming on this road?
Through you, Mayor Burton, the report that Imran talked about from the radar speed signs is great because it will allow us to break the time into 15-minute increments, hours, days. We can do a lot with our reporting tool. And so it does allow us to look to see if there are outliers and strange things happening at different times of the day. Our process has always been to sort of look for the normal time and the average time. That the outliers really are an enforcement issue. The average or regular day-to-day actions are where we want to get the traffic calming. So we do look over that 48-hour period and determine what the 85th percentile is to set or to determine whether it moves on to traffic calming. In looking at the data, if something does look out of the ordinary, we would do a deeper dive to look at it. But yes, overall, we are working with that 85th percentile, which is the operating speed of the road.
Okay, thank you for that. So basically, we're stuck if you don't hit the warrant and you're at 55. We really don't have any traffic calming tools to offer the residents who are frustrated because automated speed enforcement can only be in 2 places in the ward and they can only be in community safety zones. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, that's correct. The only other item I would offer is we do have the mobile radar speed display board, which is the trailer mounted board. We rotate for a couple weeks at a time to different locations as that education tool as well.
Okay. Well, I must say that I'm frustrated on behalf of the residents because I know they want some form of traffic calming tools, whether it's the flexible bollard that you see in Burlington, whether it's the planter that you suggested, which narrows the roadway on the few roads that we have are very wide. And when they're just near the mark, they start to say, well, but you're not on my street every day. This is a 48-hour window. It's an average. I'm worried about my kids. So, we're really not in a great position. I've sent to members of council an alternative motion because I do believe we need you to go and find some traffic calming options for those that are on the cusp. And I don't want it to be, as Councillor Grant said, just a placebo. I mean, there is something to be said for some of the other traffic calming tools other communities use. And if we could have access to that, or at least understand what that would cost us to be able to provide, I would appreciate that, though I'll let the motion on the floor stand, and I've put mine forward to others to consider.
Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you to Jill and Imran for the work in the traffic team. You're always very responsive, and we appreciate and the residents appreciate that. And we have a test of it tomorrow, I guess, with Oakville. So we've got about 16 residents. But what I echo kind of what Councillor Elgar was mentioning, just about the automatic speed enforcement, to start getting those implemented and see if that helps start calming. And I also thank you for bringing the threshold down so that we can actually get more of these speed surveys to be able to try and figure out what can we do for each area, depending on what works best in that area to try and calm the traffic. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and I don't support the motion on the table at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to all my council colleagues for this. Just in speaking to it, it was a bit of a straw argument when we went and set out on this mission anyway, because it was never going to put up a few signs and human behavior was going to change. It has never been about that. It never will be about that. Anything that we want to do that is hard to change human behavior takes time. It takes a multitude of effort. If you look at how we got cigarettes out of bars, if you look at how we got seatbelts on people, recycling, and I've mentioned that before, it's never about putting some signs up and all of a sudden people change. But one thing that we did do at that time is governments at all levels set a marker. They said, this is what we believe in. And we don't believe vehicles should be driving 50 to 60 kilometers an hour where our kids play basketball, where our seniors are walking on the sidewalks, where we're out shoveling driveways, where people are jogging. We don't believe 50 to 60 kilometers an hour should be the norm. What we think it should be is 40 to 50. And dozens of municipalities think it should be lower and have made it lower, right across the GTHA, in Halton, all over, because they've started down a process to get to generational change. And it does not happen by throwing signs up and putting pieces of paper in a mailbox. So it was never about this. It was never about the data that we're going to get back. It's about this council setting the marker and saying, this is where we think everybody should get to, and now let's get our kids and everybody else to eventually get there. So I never wanted this to be, hey, it's a silver arrow that's going to fix things. But if we don't set and say, this is what our expectation is for people in our communities, then we can't tell them to slow down because we're not asking them to slow down. So that's why I think it's important to do this. I think we have an obligation in our residential communities as we get more and more density and we continue to intensify, having vehicles going through where our kids play, where we all live on our front yards and everywhere else at close to 60 kilometers an hour. It's just, it's a goal that we need to start addressing, and we start addressing it by saying, this is where you should be. Whether we can get there next year, 5 years, 10 years, I can't make any promises, but I know dozens of municipalities are way ahead of us on this one. I think we should be doing it, but I can tell you I've been at this since 2016, so it's probably my last blow in the sail on this one. But I would ask for a recorded vote, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Council, if I could offer a bit of a comment. I've heard a lot of different things tonight, but one of the things that sticks out to me and is, I think, especially visible in what Councillor Haslett-Deal has circulated is, I'll just read what she wrote because I don't have to come up with my own words. To address resident traffic safety concerns for the streets that are near the current traffic calming threshold, or as Councilor O'Meara, you just said, we want to get the 60s down. I think most people believe that 50 is fine, if only, and would people please not do 60? It seems to me that Councillor Haslett-Deal is on the track of an approach that might help, and I would just recommend or offer this to you, Councillor Haslett-Deal, that staff explore traffic calming options, and I would say including changing the criteria for streets that are near the current traffic calming threshold established for 50 kilometers. I don't think you need that, but that's all fine, just leave that. But I just think that if we focus on, if you're near the threshold, well, maybe it's easy as changing the threshold. And that was something that staff could report on as part of the larger request for options. Okay, so that's my suggestion on that. And as I understand it, you'd like to add this to the existing motion.
To Sean's motion? No,
No, we
Sean
have,
separated.
yes, Sean has a motion. It has two parts. Part A is the staff recommendation in the agenda. Part B is the option 1 on page 94 that is in the italics. And this, I would accept as Part C if Councillor, and the way to get it there is for you to move an amendment to his motion to add this as Part C.
So I would do that, and I'd be prepared to do that. I think it's our way forward to make some progress.
All right. And will you be adding that with the words I signaled?
Mayor Burton, I would be pleased to add those. Thank you for your advice.
Okay, so is there any objection to adding Part C to the motion on the floor, which is Councilor O'Meara's motion, Part A and Part B? I'm going to take it that your hand is not in opposition, and I'll declare that that amendment carries. Thank you. That was very good. Now, I gather that it's time to vote, and Councilor O'Meara has asked for a recorded vote. Councilor O'Meara, do you need I'm sorry, it's not quite time to vote. We have a dedicated delegation from Pierre Sauvageau, and so let me just wait, please, Mr. Sauvageau. I will call you. I just want to make sure I've got everything parliamentarily set up in order here. Councilor O'Meara, my question was, do you need a recorded vote on each piece, or would you be satisfied with a recorded vote on Part B?
Just on Part B is great, yeah.
Thank you. You're terrific to work with. Now, Madam Clerk, it's time to hear from our delegation. Welcome, Mr. Sauvageau, and thank you for the time you invested hearing all of that.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors. I just want to state that I support the recommendation contained as per staff, with the exception of the 40-kilometer speed limit. I fully support Councillor O'Meara's Part B. Could you turn to the next slide, please? Okay, basically the discussion will be fairly high level. It's basically a high risk of injury and death for pedestrians, which I'll be covering. The speed studies, result summary, options for the 40-kilometer implementation, and the conclusion. Next slide. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And if you all take a look on the left side of the screen, the approximate survival rate if hit by a vehicle at the falling speeds are as follows. Now you can see at 50, the survival rate is only 2 out of 10. At 60, it's almost 0. So that is something that you have to be aware of. And Councillor O'Meara states it so eloquently that we have to take a stand in our community. 60 is too high, 50 is too high, 40 may be reasonable because it's 3 times the 50-kilometer speed limit, the survival or whatever is 3 times that at 50. It's something that you have to be aware. Now, in regards to changing all local residential roads to 40, I support, like I said, option 1. It's so important for the residents of Oakville. I've seen in my neighborhood, and I used to shovel snow, but my back I can't now, so I get the town's program to do that for me. I'm a senior and my back hurts. But in the old days, when I was shoveling that snow, man, I tell you, I see those cars traveling even 50 to 60, and I almost fly back because I'm wondering whether or not that car is going to hit me because they may slide right into the area which I am shoveling. And it has happened in the past. Thank God I wasn't there at the time. Now, I strongly recommend council vote for option B. Next slide, please. You've all seen this chart. while the before and after studies present almost the same results, you may be aware that simply putting up a sign does not change driver behavior automatically. There are many things which can, which, for instance, Council Elgar mentioned about increasing the amount of enforcement. Very true. And it's something which should be done by the town. And I thank staff for all the work that they've done in trying to ensure the safe community we have, or could even be better. Next slide, please. Like I said, I support option 4. Pardon me, I support option 1 in regards to 40 kilometers. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the 40 kilometers speed limit should be implemented on all local and minor collector roads by posting speed limits at all entry and exit points of the neighborhoods. The budget is $251,000. But you know, I've heard from presentations from, like, for instance, the fire department in regards to, they say, well, we need staff or else we'll have deaths. People will not survive if there's a fire. We need to ensure that we're protected. Same sort of logic in regards to traffic safety. 40 kilometers is reasonable. Other municipalities have done it. And I think council and the town should move forward on that. And I thank Councilor Hamiro, again, in regards to asking for a recorded vote on item B. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Salvaggio, for your delegation.
Thank you.
All right, Council, is there any objection to Councilor O'Meara's motion's first part, A, the staff recommendation? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and that carries. On B, which is option 1 from page 94, we will have a recorded vote. Madam Clerk, would you call the council's names? And council, you'll answer yes if you're in support of the proposition, and you'll answer no if you're against. Madam Clerk?
Councillor O'Meara?
Yes.
Councillor McNeice?
Yes.
Councillor Dudek?
No.
Councillor Chisholm?
No.
Councillor Giddings?
No.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
No.
Was that a no? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yes, that was a no.
Okay, thank you.
Very soft.
Councillor Elgar?
No.
Councillor Longo?
No.
Mayor Burton?
No.
Councillor Grant?
No.
Councillor Adams?
No.
Councillor Lischina?
No.
Councillor Nanda?
Yes.
Councillor Shi?
Yes.
And the motion fails.
But it was close. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work on that item. We now have 10.2. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. We have Part C. Is there any objection to Part C? I telepathically knew. Part C is carried. Thank you, everybody, and Councillor Haslett-Thiel. 10.2, Oakville Transit Ride-on-Demand Transit Expansion Plan. And we have a presentation by Adrian Cowan, the Director of Oakville Transit, and the ask here is that Council endorse the expansion in select areas of town. Mr. Cowan, we are all yours.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of Council. My name is Adrian Cowan, the Director of Oakville Transit, and I'm here to present the Oakville Transit Ride-on-Demand Expansion Plan for 2024. Next slide, please. Tonight's presentation will provide information on the Oakville Transit System, the services offered, information on the on-demand pilot, the on-demand expansion plan for 2024. Next slide. Oakville Transit provides conventional and specialized transit services to the town's residents. Conventional transit services are provided within the urban boundaries of the town, connecting with Burlington Transit to the west and MyWay, Mississauga Transit, to the east. The system also connects with GO Transit's Lakeshore West train at 4 different stations, which include Bronte GO Station, Oakville GO Station, Clarkson GO Station in the city of Mississauga, and Appleby GO Station in the city of Burlington. In addition to the rail network, Oakville Transit also connects with GO Transit buses at the train stations, with additional connections occurring at the GO Transit carpool lots at Dundas Street and Highway 407 and Trafalgar Road and Highway 407. The connections Oakville Transit makes with the neighboring agencies and the regional bus and rail system creates a network of transit services for residents to use. Next slide. Within the Oakville Transit system, a family of services consisting of conventional routes, specialized door-to-door services, share ride pre-booked services, and currently a pilot known as ride-on-demand services are offered to residents. The conventional service is provided through a variety of fixed routes and school specials. This service is operated on a fixed schedule and operates various routes throughout the week. Oakville Transit also operates Caravan, which is a door-to-door service for registered customers who cannot use the conventional transit system. The service is provided by fully accessible transit vehicles, which are supplemented by taxis. The service operates within the municipal boundary of Oakville and provides cross-boundary connections with Burlington's Handy Van and Peel's Trans Help accessible services. Home to Hub is a share ride pre-booked transit service offered in select areas where fixed conventional routes are not offered. Customers are able to book their ride in advance by an interactive voice response system through the web, through a mobile app, or by contacting our call center. Customers are picked up from their home and taken to the nearest hub to connect with a fixed route. The Home to Hub service also utilizes fully accessible small capacity vehicles driven by Oakville Transit operators. Over the past year, Oakville Transit has been piloting a ride-on-demand service, which is an evolution of the Home to Hub service. Ride-on-demand is a shared ride service providing customers with the ability to travel from any address to another within a designated zone or to transit hubs within the zone where they can transfer to other Oakville Transit services. Next slide. A little history about the Home to Hub service. It began operating in June 2015 and was designed for customers to pre-schedule a trip from their curbed address location with travel to one predetermined hub. In January 2018, the service was expanded to the Lynbrook, Winston Park, and Falgarwood areas. And finally, in 2019, the Home to Hub service was further expanded to include Reynolds Street in Southeast Oakville. Next slide. Now to the on-demand service. Ride on Demand has been planned as an evolution, again, as an evolution of the Home to Hub service, enabling riders to book the same-day trips closest to their desired travel time, allowing flexibility that better meets their travel needs and doesn't follow any particular fixed route. Ride-on-demand transit services are a cost-efficient way to deliver transit in areas of low transit demand without having to implement conventional fixed-route scheduled service. The service is designed to be more flexible by enabling customers to request a trip on demand using self-serve booking options or by calling the transit call center. The service is flexible as customers will be able to travel from any address to another or to other transit hubs in the same designated zone. Next slide. In preparing to implement the on-demand pilots, staff conducted a survey to understand travel patterns of residents in the selected pilot areas. The survey was available in June of 2022 to customers over a 2-week period through oakville.ca and oakvilletransit.ca. Residents were able to provide input regarding their commuting habits and provide insight to a transit service that meet their needs. The survey was promoted by postcards delivered to homes in the pilot service areas, on bus through posters, through social media channels, and the town's public engagement hub. The data collected from the survey helped determine the potential demand and resources required for the on-demand services in the pilot areas. Next slide. In October of 2022, Oakville Transit implemented the pilot in select areas of North and Southeast Oakville, which have been a success. As noted earlier, the service allows for travel from one address to another within a designated zone, which is new and different from the home-to-hub service, or to transit hubs within the zone where they can travel to other Oakville Transit services. Next slide. To date, the on-demand pilots have been a success in providing service to residents in wards 3 and 7. Since the on-demand pilots started in October of 22, there have been over 500 combined trips. Staff identified and compiled most of the travel data destinations by ward, and these include the Oakville GO Station in Ward 3, the Udinawi Public School, the Uptown Core Terminal, and the Walmart Supercenter Plaza in Ward 7. Next slide, please. Through valuable ride-on-demand operating insight, staff are recommending the expansion of ride-on-demand service within the town. The following are the planned changes to the ride-on-demand service in 2024. Staff are recommending to permanently implement the service in wards 3 and 7. Staff are planning to expand the ride-on-demand service to replace rush hour Route 26 service in the Falgarwood area and rush hour Route 34 service in the Bronte Creek neighborhood. The current local conventional services operating within these communities are currently operating at less than 10 passengers per hour. The removal of the rush hour conventional service will be replaced by the ride-on-demand service and will provide more coverage and service span for the area. Staff also recommend expanding the ride-on-demand service to replace late-night service here in the town. Oakville Transit currently operates 2 late-night services from the Oakville GO Station. Staff are recommending ride-on-demand replace the existing late-night service to enable customers for more direct trips and end-stop locations in the evening. Next slide. In addition to the changes noted in the previous slide, staff recommend the home-to-hub service be phased out with the implementation of full-time on-demand service in wards 3 and 7. This recommendation will reduce the duplication of on-demand services offered in the existing home-to-hub areas. As a result of the consolidation of the services, staff will be expanding the on-demand service hours to ensure there is no impact to any active home-to-hub users who currently use the service outside the ride-on-demand pilot service hours. Next slide. Upon approval of the 2024 on-demand expansion plan, staff will prepare ride-on-demand service changes for 2024. A communication strategy will be prepared for residents who will be impacted by the expansion of the on-demand service to ensure a seamless transition in 24. As always, customers and residents are encouraged to contact Oakville Transit customer service should they have any questions regarding plan changes or transit services in general. This now concludes my presentation of the Ride-on-Demand 2024 expansion plan. Should there be any questions, I am happy to answer them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. As it happens, there's a garden full of questions here. The lead-off gardener will be Councillor Grant.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Great report. I think that the service is a good addition or change. I'm more interested, though, in the late-night service from the GO Station. How does that look to the user? especially if a person, I realize that you're looking at, sorry for this aside, I realize you're looking at updating the app so that people can contact after hours better, but how is that going to look? Especially if somebody gets like the last train or wants to get one of the last trains into Toronto.
Through you, Mayor Burton. With the implementation of the 2024 expansion, we're also looking to unlock the app, which means that anyone coming in, say the last train on the GO train service, would be able to open their app and actually request a ride from the Oakville GO station. While that app is open, they would put in their end address, they would know when the bus is ready to come pick them up, and they would take them to their final location. Right now, the way it works is when the train comes in, there's 2 buses waiting. The customer has to get onto the bus and tell the operator where they want to go, and then the operator has to quickly make a trip plan based on how many people are asking for a ride, and then they try to follow that route to drop everybody off in a safe location. So the app is actually going to help program those trips on their own, and the operator will get a triptych, as I call it, to start dropping off passengers in the evening.
Okay, and that works leaving the GO station. Let's say I have a fancy social life and there's a party in Toronto that I want to get to late night. How does it work from that end then?
Through you, Mayor Burton, at this point, we are looking to keep the same hours in terms of the operating hours of the late night service. Should we receive more and more demand, we would have to review what the potential impact would be to expanding the late night service hours to accommodate your great social life.
Okay, and as you do observations and look through things, will there be further reports on the late night service that we could see?
Through you, Mayor Burton, any changes to that late night service would be coming back to council for review and approval.
Great. I'd like to see a bit more about, the numbers look great, but it always comes down to the customer service at the end of the day. So, right, thank you very much.
Councillor McNeice, and then Councillor Shi, and then Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, really appreciate the extended service into Bronny Creek. I was on the phone with a resident today who was expressing their concerns in that area. One question I do have is on the timing. It's great it starts at 5:40 in the morning if someone needs to get to commuter transit into Toronto. However, I worry that it wraps up at 7:45 p.m. I think people, I was talking to a Sheridan College student who may have night class or something like that. And for people to have trust in a system like this, they need to know their ride home is guaranteed. Is there, just fill me in on what the thoughts are if somebody, is playing volleyball till 8 at the rec center or has something going on later than 7:45 p.m. and needs to get home.
Through you, Mayor Burton, as noted in the presentation, with the consolidation of the home to hub service, the actual service span is planned to be increased to 9 o'clock. Again, we aren't getting many requests after 9 o'clock for the service. Should there be an increase in requests for the service past 9, then we would, again, review the requirement for additional services. So right now, I do believe the ride-on-demand service finishes at 7 p.m., but again, with the coordination with the home to hub service, we are planning to expand it to incorporate those hours so that at least we have one on-demand service out there which would operate past or to 9 o'clock.
Okay, that's certainly an improvement. Thank you.
Councillor Shi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Director, for this wonderful report. So I like it. So I have some need to clarify or get some data. So based on your report, so Ward 7, we have 324 trips, and you got 3 destination, the most traveler destinations. So may I know the data, if you have the data, so those top 3 destination road, so do we have how many passengers per hour, some data like that? So can I have some idea about 1 person or 2 or 5 or 3 per hour for that demand on those popular routes?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I would have to compile that information for that specific request. Today, I was just presenting the general data, and I'm more than happy to share that information once we create that specific response for you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I fully support. So we're very happy we can get a permanent those ride on demand in our Ward 7. Thank you.
Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Director. I'm just wondering how this fits into the whole transit strategic plan review that we're doing or we're supposed to be doing this year. Or, I mean, it just seems like this is coming a little bit before the horse. So how does this fit into the work that we're going to be doing about our whole bus routes and bus extensions? And I guess, why do this now and not wait until we're at that phase to do this?
Through you, Mayor Burton, absolutely great question. Actually, this year we are starting on the 5-year business plan, which will be looking at a fulsome review of the system. On top of that, there is the whole notion of providing the family of services. On an annual basis, staff review the system and its performance on all their routes. And in identifying underperforming routes, there's always options to cancel the service completely or provide something else other than fixed route conventional. In the case of the Bronte Creek route, we are seeing low ridership. And again, don't get me wrong, before we implement the service, we will be reassessing the ridership just to make sure there hasn't been a change in terms of from when we originally looked at the data versus when we start to implement. But based on current operating guidelines, when we have a route that is operating with lower than 10 passengers per hour, that's usually a consideration for canceling a fixed conventional route. We don't want to do that, and we want to continue providing as much transit service we can for the residents. In response to not canceling, we are implementing on-demand. Now, the on-demand would be available all day, and not just the rush hours. It is on all-day service, which means residents who currently get rush hour only service in the Bronte Creek area would get that on-demand service all day, which would connect to a higher frequency based route. Now, when you ask about what is that connection, technically we're looking to see where service is best served throughout the town. And in areas that have low transit demand, we do not want to not provide transit service. We want to offer something that encourages that movement and encourages that transit use. The nice thing about the on-demand service is that there's designated connections. Instead of just taking a customer from one stop to another stop, we're actually creating that actual transfer somewhere where we know there's going to be other transit services. And this is something that customers always look for when making a transfer. They don't want to be transferring at an intersection of 2 local routes where there's no amenities. This on-demand service actually provides that additional customer service in providing a transfer where we know there's going to be a fixed route transfer. So it's a good time to try. Now, we are looking to implement after the winter time. Again, we don't want to start something January 1st and say, oh, okay. But at this time, we do feel that the Bronte Creek area is a good candidate for it. But again, before we implement, we will review.
All righty. Let's turn to Councillor Haslett-Deal and then Councillor Grant.
Thank you very much for the report. As you know, we're eager to continue to have ride on demand. Can I just clarify, on one of the maps, it didn't show Clearview in the purple circle. And it was really important to us that Clearview is part of that process. It is how they would get to their community center.
Through you, Mayor Burton, the existing home to hub and ride on demand, as it's covered with, if it's already covered in that area, then it would be covered in the final implementation. Again, the circles aren't to scale.
Okay, all right. I thought you might, wait a minute, you can't take this away from Clearview. Okay, so then my next question is just around the timing of the app.
Through you, Mayor Burton, great question, and I know we've been trying to provide you as many updates as possible. We are currently configuring the app, which we are trying to get into testing this fall. So what we've decided is that with the implementation of on-demand, this 2024 expansion, the app will be ready to go, which gives us some time to finalize all the testing, and then go to the public with the expansion. So we're hoping Q2, at the end of Q1, Q2 of 24, it will actually be ready for use.
Q2, eh?
It takes
Adrian,
a bit of time to
help me
program.
out here, like it's, okay. That's the answer I got. My last question is along the lines of what Councillor Amir said. On the 5-year plan, will you show us the cost of running a grid system? Listen, I think that Ride on Demand is the future, and it is a way to balance all the needs, and it is an adjustment for some people. They haven't thought about the great opportunity of, I've got a safe ride, I can get, from door to door. I mean, there's so many pluses, but the grid system does have some advantages as well. So in that 5-year master plan, are you going to at least share with us the implications of a grid system? Because I do get asked that.
Through you, Mayor Burton, yes, definitely. One of the precursors to a grid system is that residents who currently have a one-seat ride may have to transfer. And I'll give you an example. Our Route 5 Dundas travels all the way from Burlington across Dundas and travels all the way down Trafalgar to the GO station. We're going to need to change that. And we have Uptown Core, which is a great place for a transfer. The minute you have an operational issue on one end in Burlington means everybody across Dundas and Trafalgar is going to be impacted by that. When you start gridding that and cutting that one-seat transfer or that one-seat ride, you can actually begin to increase frequencies on those routes that actually need that frequency, say keeping it straight along, say, Dundas, and you really do mitigate any operational issues on the rest of the system. So those are that is just one example of what could potentially happen when we start kind of taking away that wheat sheaf, that double kind of line duty. But yes, that will be reviewed as part of the 5-year plan.
Okay, my last question. Can I do Ride on Demand from Oakville GO to downtown?
Through you, Mayor Burton, depending on downtown, but I don't think so at this point. I don't think downtown falls within the zone, the current zone.
So it is Ward 3. And I can take it from Aspen Forest over to downtown, and I can take it from Clearview to downtown, but I couldn't be picked up at the Oakville GO to go downtown on Ride on Demand. Is that right?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I'd have to double check in terms of the boundaries for you. I can get back to you tomorrow.
The reason I just asked the question is we do get asked about expediting. As you think about Midtown, as you think about change and evolution, how can you have a direct route straight into downtown to make it easier, fast, more efficient, and get the frequency? I just leave that suggestion with you because I must hear it with a fair amount of frequency. Thank you.
Councillor Grant.
So actually, Councillor Hasselthiel has a very good point about downtown. It's only a number 14 bus. Anywhere you want to go to, you've got billions of buses to take, but downtown it's usually just a number 14. So it would be good to look at the downtown area as part of an expansion. And number 5, breaking that up might be problematic. A lot of seniors along Trafalgar get collected and go to the hospital that way. So, but anyways, that's beside the point. Dovetailing on things that were brought up by Councillor McNeese and O'Meara, when we are talking about the futures of this 5-year plan, I'm hopeful that any efficiencies that we would get from savings and changing all these programs would allow us to then go later into the evening. And I realize you may not get many people asking for it after 9 o'clock, but maybe it's just because it's not offered after 9 o'clock. So when you're looking at your future plans, I'd like to see some idea as to what we can do to expand into later into the evening. Great, thank you.
Councillor Grant, sorry. Thank you. When we get back, Councillor Shi is up now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question. I just want to share one thing is existing the route. So there's also, we can think about the 5 years plan. So I can see recently there's, for example, it's 19, Route 19, 745. So recently I found there's 2 bus come together. It's called School Special, right? So that's kind of, so when you evaluate all those ridership double or even triple, so that's your decision to make the two bus together at the same time? Is something that can implement to other hotspots, like two other schools in the morning, something like that?
Through you, Mayor Burton, the creation of school specials really is to reduce the burden on the conventional system. So I understand where you're coming from in terms of the regular Route 19, and right behind it is a school special. Majority of the time, the school special will actually do something a little different at the beginning of the route to go pick up students, and then again, Route 19 follows and actually falls within a school right on the street, and that's why we have those school specials. If there is a demand and a requirement for a service for the school, then we would look into it and see what demand would actually be. We've been monitoring that, especially with the free youth as well, and we actually had to put in a few extra trips for school specials this past month. So it's not unusual. If it was two completely the same 19s, then there's something happened on the road. But if it's a 19 and a school special, then yes, it makes sense. The school special is coming in for the bell time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council, for your wide-ranging discussion of transit, and thank you, Councillor Grant, for moving the endorsement of the on-demand service expansion in select areas of town. Council, is there any objection to Councillor Grant's motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. Thank you, Councillor Grant. Council, I'm going to declare a little bio break because we've been going for more than 2 hours, and some of you have been training me to do this after 2 hours or so, and this is me showing that I remember. We will resume at 9 o'clock. Please be back. Council is now resuming after a brief recess, and the first item in front of us is item 10.3, the Rainwater Management Financial Plan, Stormwater Fee Development, and consideration of green stormwater infrastructure. We have a presentation from Catherine Hewitson, and she is the Director of Corporate Asset Management. We have 3 registered delegations, and I recommend that you give your attention to Ms. Director Hewitson. I can tell you from working with her for a very long time, she knows her stuff.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Good evening, everyone. I'll start with the next slide. So there are a number of definitions for the term green infrastructure and various terminology associated. Traditionally, green infrastructure is an interconnected network of natural ecosystems such as wetlands, forests, and green spaces that work to sustain clean air and water. Green infrastructure also includes nature-based approaches to stormwater management that protect, restore, or mimic the natural water cycle. The idea behind green infrastructure is to mimic the way that our natural ecosystem works to naturally manage rainwater. At the town, we're required to follow the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Park guidelines and regulations who define green infrastructure as natural and human-made or engineered elements or systems that provide ecological and hydrological functions and processes. MECP states that at its core, green stormwater infrastructure is a fundamental approach to rainwater management that protects, restores, or mimics the natural water cycle while delivering environmental, social, and economic benefits. Green infrastructure is a broad category which includes a number of various different types of infrastructure and applications. There are also many terms used to talk about green infrastructure, including natural infrastructure, natural assets, natural-based solutions, low-impact development, and more. The MECP definition for green infrastructure includes natural assets such as heritage features, parklands, street trees, urban forests, natural channels, and floodplains. It also includes a definition for low-impact development, or LADs, as engineered or human-made stormwater infrastructure that seek to mitigate the impact of increased runoff and pollution by managing runoff as close to its source as possible with the idea to mimic the natural water cycle. There are many types of engineered green infrastructure, ranging from bioswales, native plantings, green roofs, permeable pavement, rain gardens, and rain barrels. However, they all have the same purpose: to slow down, store, and/or filter water. Gray stormwater, on the other hand, stormwater infrastructure, such as curbs, gutters, storm pipes, and culverts, collect stormwater runoff and are designed to convey it as quickly and efficiently as possible. The term gray is used because these examples are generally not designed to provide any runoff quality treatment. Holistically, rainwater is managed through the use of both types of infrastructure, with green being preferred. And not to forget that many of these opportunities require both private and public involvement. It is a system that needs to work together to manage the overall water cycle. The town has an extensive number of natural parks, trees, creeks, and shoreline that are maintained and preserved. In addition, the town has a wide range of examples of engineered or human-made green infrastructure that has been implemented over the years as part of development or capital projects. A few examples here are, as part of development in North Oakville, to date, the town owns and maintains 72 storm ponds, which are good examples of engineered green infrastructure that provide both effective quantity and quality benefits. In the Star Oak North Phase 1 development, biotension facilities were built. In addition, vegetated swales were incorporated along 4th Line from Wycroft Road to Spears Road on the north and on the northwest side of the Metrolinx Railway project. In addition, a bioswale was constructed at the Brawny Bluffs. The North Operations Depot parking lot was constructed with permeable pavers. Downtown Lakeshore contains 93 soil cells for all the trees in the project limits. And those are just a few examples. This chart illustrates the rainwater management plan scope of work and the relationship with the stormwater study recommendations, project implementation, and budget approval process. Essentially, there are 3 components: the studies and recommendations, the planning, evaluation, and funding analysis, the project implementation, with the town's policy and legislative requirements providing the overarching principles and guidelines in the development of the studies, recommendations, and implementation. Every new development, town project, or study is guided by various policies and guidelines from the town, including the official plan, the town asset management plans, development and capital engineering procedures and guidelines. In addition, the development of a climate action plan is a commitment in Council's 2023 to 2026 action plan and will be a key document. The Climate Action Plan, once completed, will provide direction with regards to various green infrastructure initiatives that pertain to many asset groups, such as the parks and open spaces, facilities, parking lots, green fleet, as well as stormwater management. It's important to note that the adoption of green infrastructure policies and green solutions goes beyond just stormwater management, as there are opportunities to incorporate green infrastructure across the organization and through development. For stormwater management assets, the policy direction that green infrastructure be preferred and gray infrastructure only where necessary will be adopted. Green stormwater infrastructure has been a requirement for town projects and developments for a number of years and will continue to be a priority going forward. There are a number of regulatory agencies that provide guidance and procedure requirements that need to be adhered to in any development or construction beginning. Examples include the conservation authorities, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, Parks, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and the Ministry of Natural Resources. So for example, when a new subdivision is designed and built, the increased runoff from the new impervious area, from the roads, sidewalks, driveways, and rooftops, must be dealt with both from a quantity and a quality perspective, and requires a detailed stormwater management plan be developed, which is reviewed not only by the town, but also by these other agencies, such as Conservation Halton and MACP. The various town stormwater and riverine studies and other asset condition assessments are also completed based on these policies and guidelines. And they all support the mandate and consideration of green infrastructure. The recommendations from these studies are high level in nature and need to be further evaluated in the next stages of project implementation. So as the study recommendations move forward into future individual projects, each one will complete a green infrastructure assessment if it has not already been completed, either through the formal environmental assessment process if required, or through a functional design or detailed design process. Each project will identify potential solutions to consider a range of green, gray, and hybrid solutions, and the potential options are evaluated against the individual project needs and objectives based on the location, situation, costs, and benefits, with green infrastructure being the preferred option. The strategic plan has a number of initiatives that all need to be considered when balancing out the project design consideration, such as climate resiliency and flood mitigation, active transportation, mobility, asset management to sustainability, as well as the ongoing maintenance and operation. As part of the next phases of project implementation, public information sessions will be planned where the various options will be presented with the evaluation on how each meets the particular objectives and needs of the project. More information will be provided than in the past to explain the different options evaluated and the rationale for the recommended options, and provide the opportunity to educate residents on how and where green infrastructure is being incorporated. Now, as I noted earlier, the majority of the project recommendations are in early stages of planning and have not begun an EA or a detailed design phase. The nature and type of the project will determine the next steps and applicability of green infrastructure assessment. So for example, the creek shoreline projects are considered green infrastructure already, as natural channel design principles and materials are standard use. Our ponds provide water quality and quantity controls, and the proposed work is to do the regulatory cleanout of the sediments. So therefore, no further green evaluation will be required for those types of projects. The various stormwater master plan projects will require additional stages of study, functional analysis, design, and consultation, which will begin once individual study areas are approved as part of the annual capital budget process. The riverine studies, on the other hand, are all municipal class environmental assessment studies, and therefore have followed the EA process in which green alternatives have been considered and evaluated according to the regulations, and they have included public consultation. Upon completion of the EAs, projects will move to detailed design stages as they are approved as part of the annual capital budget process. Other various projects, if not already subject to an EA, will complete a green infrastructure evaluation as part of the detailed design, which will include public information sessions before construction begins. So each type of green and gray infrastructure serves slightly different purpose and variation in design benefits. Ideally, the green and gray infrastructure need to work together to provide overall stormwater protection and manage the water cycle. Built green infrastructure incorporates designs that intercept runoff before it reaches paved surfaces, while also filtering pollutants and sediments from the water in the process. The gray infrastructure helps to control the volume of runoff and direct it to appropriate outlet and help prevent flooding onto roads and property. As mentioned in the report, consideration of green infrastructure is embedded into our project implementation process. As part of the evaluation process, various green and gray alternatives will be identified and evaluated against the individual project needs. So as an example, the EA for Wycroft Road was recently completed. The results of the EA recommended a number of green stormwater infrastructure options, such as the water control devices, underground infiltration chambers, underground storage facility, permeable pavement for the sidewalk and multi-use pathway, maintain the flat bottom vegetated ditches where feasible. So the project next step will be to complete the functional and detailed designs, analysis, obtain the regulatory approvals to confirm the exact types, quantity, and combination of green and gray stormwater infrastructure to meet the stormwater runoff control as well as the environmental requirements. In general, green infrastructure such as storm ponds, ditches, vegetated swales is the preferred option to infiltrate or control the runoff, but in some cases may not meet the particular need or be feasible. Gray infrastructure may be used to complement to manage the conveyance of the more intense storms. This is how the hybrid of the green and the gray solutions will be considered to work together to first manage the rain where it falls and filter and remove pollutants, with the overflow conveyed while using the gray infrastructure. So moving over to the blue side of the chart, the rainwater management plan is a financial plan that looks at the various stormwater-related infrastructure and natural assets to deliver a holistic long-term 30-year plan and supporting financial model. The mandate is to maximize benefit and create the most resiliency possible in an effective and cost-efficient manner. This aligns with Council's strategic plan to improve resiliency and protect our infrastructure. Overall, this plan reviews the recommendations that have come out of the various stormwater studies, riverine studies, and other condition assessment studies completed over the last several years, with the main objectives to, 1, evaluate the risks, service impact, and cost of the various project recommendations. 2, prioritize the projects. So ones with the highest risk and the greatest benefit are planned for first, develop the 30-year plan, and determine the total requirement. And lastly, assess the funding options to finance the 30-year plan and develop a new fee model. The overall objective of the rainwater management plan is to develop a financing plan that will provide a sustainable funding source to protect the town's existing stormwater infrastructure and natural assets, as well as incorporate enhancements to build the resiliency and help adapt to climate change. This process is similar to a development charges study and how it's undertaken. As you recall, the recommendations from the various master plans, like the Transportation Master Plan, the Recreation, Parks and Library Master Plan, Fire, et cetera, are all fed into the DC study and analyzed and evaluated to determine the long-term plan and the total value of infrastructure to support growth. Analysis is completed to then determine the amount to be recovered from development fees and the DC charge that's required over the long-term period to sustain the program. So this is very similar work that we're doing under the rainwater management side of the plan. Once this rainwater management plan evaluation and funding model has been developed, the long-term plan and recommended fee structure will be presented to be approved by council for incorporation into the budget and begin the project implementation process. So the rainwater management plan and stormwater fee has been a multi-year project. We provided an update report on the July 11th council meeting to provide details on the completion of phase 1 and phase 2 of the project, which indicated that in order to update our aging infrastructure and incorporate improvements to adapt to the impacts of climate change, we would need $640 million. This means We will need on average 21.3 million every year over the next 30 years. So phase 3 of the rainwater management plan is to develop that financing strategy, including evaluation of a fee model and the various options. Development of the fee structure involves a number of different steps and components. So they include developing fee structure principles, balancing out the equitability of the fee versus the implementation of a fee. Research into what other municipalities have developed. Determining a financing strategy to look at how much over what term and potential options to phase in the fee. We'll be looking at evaluating the fee model options. Who is getting charged, how it's calculated, on what basis. We also need to look at the fee collection methods. Will it be on a tax bill, a utility bill? Will it be town-wide or area-specific? And lastly, we need to develop an implementation, public engagement, and communication plan. So staff will be retaining a consultant to help us with these various components of phase 3 of the plan, and we'll report back to council in 2024 with recommendations on the type of fee and the recommended structure. So in conclusion, the incorporation of green infrastructure goes beyond the work being done through the rainwater management plan and will need to be considered with a corporate lens as part of the climate action plan, as well as other town plans and policies. With respect to stormwater, green infrastructure has been a priority and a requirement for town projects for a number of years and will continue to be a priority as we move forward with the implementation of the various stormwater projects. With green infrastructure as the preferred option and grade infrastructure used to complement when needed to work together and provide the overall optimal solution. The development of the stormwater fee will provide a long-term sustainable funding source that supports the implementation of these stormwater improvements needed not only to protect but also to enhance our stormwater network. And that is all I have for you today. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Let's see what kind of questions you've generated. Council, and would you like to hear the 3 delegations that registered while you think about further questions? Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations, please?
The first delegation is Pamela Knight. I believe she's joining us online.
Welcome, Ms. Knight. Welcome, Ms. Knight. We look forward to your presentation.
Good evening. Thank you. I want to make sure everyone can hear me.
We can hear you very well. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thanks for the opportunity to share our comments with you this evening. If I could have the first slide, please. We think the new green infrastructure first policy is a good first start. We all know, and we've just, as we've heard in the presentation, that the amount of that green infrastructure can obviously control the amount of runoff that enters the green system. But we also want to stress the fact that it can lengthen the lifespan of gray infrastructure. Which is why it's such a good idea, obviously, for it to be used alongside, because it can represent manageable savings for us in the future. It can be utilized in new development or in retrofit installations that can improve water quality and maintain stream form and function, and it delivers measurable results. Next slide, please. I just want to take a minute before I talk about some examples of green infrastructure that we wanted to share with you. and just talk a little bit more about the fee that we've been talking about. So as it was in the report and has recently been mentioned, we're looking at $639 million over the next 30 years. And that's forecast to be a 21.3 million annually for those 30 years, with a shortfall of about 12 million each year, which it seems that property owners will be asked to cover that shortfall. So from a public standpoint, while the information, the data, the financial details, and so on may reside in various places within the town, reports, budgets, and so on, for the most part, residents are unaware of it and don't know how it fits together. So we have some questions. What individual elements comprise the evaluation? How were cost projections made and what were they based on? Have recent legislative changes impacted projections? If inspections of assets and maintenance are underway regularly, as we know they are, shouldn't we have heard of the annual $21 million shortfall earlier? And what mitigation strategies are underway or being developed to reduce the current financial projections? Next slide, please. So getting into green infrastructure, there are a couple of things that we'd like to point out. And as you just heard, that the Riverine Creek and shoreline studies, it's suggested they would not be part of a reevaluation moving forward because they're already considered to be green infrastructure. We would like to see that position changed back to one where they would indeed be evaluated. For example, because they're in a situation in many instances where they're being affected by things that happen upstream. So the Wycroft Road project is an example. Even with that green infrastructure or the things that are being suggested, the runoff is going to increase, and that's going to go to the 14 Mile Creek. If we think about what we're doing with Midtown right now, Midtown would be directing its runoff into a number of different creeks. With shorelines, for instance, when we talk about putting armor stone out in the lake to prevent onshore damage, that's only part of the answer. We've got to lessen the amount of stormwater that we're putting into the lake in the first place, and we have to exercise natural practices to prevent erosion. The image at the left of the screen is a living wall that's created along Mississauga Road. It's to protect a creek that runs near Mississauga. It essentially prevents erosion, it cleans and filters the water, and it protects wildlife habitat. I know we talked about Credit Valley Conservation the last time I was here to speak with you, but they also offer local municipalities help with green infrastructure implementation, operations, and maintenance, and we wonder if perhaps they can assist us as well. Next slide, please. So today, at some point, you probably realized, or you probably received some fact sheets and wondered what they were about and where they were from. They were from us. And I want to show you some possibilities of things that, these are all taken from Vancouver's One Water project, and they indicate where green infrastructure can really play a role. If you read the staff report and you heard just a few minutes ago, an example was that gray infrastructure is needed to carry the runoff to a stormwater pond, for instance. Well, in fact, green infrastructure can play a greater role along that route. And this first example that I'm showing you is a Woodland Drive project in Vancouver. The objective here was to accommodate some increasing density that was happening in the area, and it was adding additional pressure to an already strained sewer and storm system. So what they did was create this bioswale that helps to capture close to 3,000 square meters of rainwater runoff, keeping 3.8 million liters of rainwater runoff out of the sewer annually. And I've given you some stats at the bottom of the screen there. You'll also find them in the little case studies that we provided. Next slide, please. Now, this one shows as a retrofit, but it certainly can be incorporated in new construction as well. In this particular situation, they were doing a major upgrade to replace aging storm and sanitary sewer mains. And it also presented an opportunity for some traffic calming and rainwater management alongside. So in total, there were 6 corner bulges that were installed, 3 of which have bioretention corners designed to capture and clean urban rainwater runoff. And again, you'll see in the stats on the bottom of the page, this is what's happening with this particular project. So a little area can basically take on many times its size in terms of controlling impervious surfaces. Next slide, please. This is an example of high density urban setting where green infrastructure is working right along beside gray. We don't see a lot of these illustrations, but this one's a really good one. So what you'll see here is a combination of green infrastructure solutions that have been introduced. We've got passive irrigation, tree trenches, which are a little bit different than silvacells, swales, permeable surfaces, and rain gardens, all brought together in an urban setting. And to me, this represents something that we should be looking at in terms of Midtown. It's a perfect opportunity. Before I move on to the next slide, I just want to give you a little bit of information about it, although it will be repeated in the video that you're going to see. But again, I'd like you to keep Midtown in your minds, because you're going to see some really innovative thoughts about creating complete streets. And so this is part of a first installment of a citywide blue-green system in Vancouver. It creates corridors that deliver rainwater management, provide active transportation routes to walk, bike, and roll, and add green spaces for the community and wildlife to enjoy. Again, there's a couple of sheets on it in the information that you received tonight, and there are stats that will indicate its importance. So if I could have the next slide, please. And if you can activate the video for me, please.
Ms. Knight, we have less than a minute left and other delegations to hear, and the night grows old. We could watch the video later ourselves. Did you want to wrap up?
That's the end of my presentation. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the time and the trouble you took to bring that to us. And we will all watch the video faithfully.
Thank you. I'm sorry that it didn't come through.
Councillor Haslett-Deal?
Mayor Burton, I'd kind of like to see it.
You will. It's being provided to you.
But then, will the public see it?
You can make, Councillor, there are no members of the public besides 3 people here.
No, but it's not being recorded.
It can be provided as an addendum.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, you can appeal my interpretation of the procedure bylaw.
I just feel like I know you've always taken great pride in hearing from the public and giving them some latitude. And if it's only a minute and a half, it would, or 2 minutes, it would be, it's good information for us all to have.
Councillor, after the other delegations, if we still have time and an appetite for it, and if it will run, we'll run it. How's that?
That sounds fine.
And if it won't run, I've heard that there's a difficulty with that, then we'll make sure that you get it. Okay?
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the next registered delegation?
The next delegation is Najin Fichkowski.
Ms. Fitzkowski, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, and hello, everyone. My apologies to Mayor Burton and members of council if I sound a little tired. It's been a really long day. I thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my feedback on the new report addressing the concerns around rainwater management plan and the development of stormwater fee. Next slide, please. I wanted to start by acknowledging some pointers that were added in this report to address the concerns that was raised in the previous council meeting and the subsequent meeting I had with Commissioner Fu and the town staff. Next slide, please. That said, just very briefly, I want to raise some concerns I had with respect to inconsistent messaging in the report, lack of scientific accuracy and actionable collaboration that was in the appended material. I worry that we are just using the term green without considering or fully comprehending the foundational concept and the paradigm shift that is necessary for successfully implementing nature-inclusive infrastructure in our community. And next slide, please. First and foremost, I'd like to request for the material being produced for public use to be carefully reviewed so that misinformation and scientific inaccuracy is not perpetuated or relayed to public and residents. We must be positioning green infrastructure as a promising solution to climate change and strive to eliminate the anxiety that's associated with climate impacts. And with that, allow people to build trust in what we scientifically know is the answer to the complex problem of climate change. From extensive research, we know that public acceptance of nature-based solutions are as a tool for risk reduction, and community resiliency has to be earned before it can be fully recognized in the community as an effective strategy. So erroneous information, such as the example I have provided here, makes it only more difficult for us to make any meaningful progress moving forward. And this is not an isolated instance. I've continuously come across and observed this type of issues, in particular in this report and the accompanying appendix. I'm very adamant about accuracy of information and would really kindly request that more attention being paid to these sort of issues. If proper research is not really possible given the timeline, and I understand that more extensive research is going to be done down the road, but there are a lot of materials made available publicly by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I apologize, who are pioneers in engineering with nature. So it can be reviewed as a minimum for accuracy of messages that is being put out to public. Next slide, please. So reading the report, what is evident in the report and the prior discourse we had, I believe there's a misalignment in the perspective around rainwater management. So I think there is some merit in revisiting water cycle and where the runoff is initiated and how it all ties in with the much needed shoreline management plan. Next slide, please. So perhaps from the previous meeting and all the information that were shared, we are all in agreement that by continuing to urbanize the road and subsequently using the traditional end-of-pipe stormwater management systems, the outcome we are aiming for gets further and further away. So looking at existing data and the urban hydrological cycle, it is evident that there's really no case to be made for arguing whether rainwater management is synonymous with stormwater management in this or any other context. Instead, I think our efforts are better be spent in identifying existing capacity and the gap to be addressed so that there is proper way to identify what necessary means when in the clause gray infrastructure to be used only when necessary. Next slide, please. So ideally, we want to be looking at an integrated system that increases our collective resiliency against more extreme weather events. And that starts with collection of the rain where it falls to reduce the runoff. And if done properly, as I shared before, the delta amount of the runoff may very well be sufficiently collected through the capacity we already have in place. And as it was mentioned in the previous delegation, the cost of replacement in that case and the maintenance of our existing engineering structure diminishes greatly if we do so. That, however, there is a caveat that we have to be mindful of, and that requires more evidence-driven measures and incorporation of that valuation into our overarching asset management plan, which I'm sure Tom is already considering it for the next steps. Next slide, please. So perhaps this diagram, I just put it here as a complement to what was presented in the appended material for the purpose of this agenda item, but I'm not going to go through this in detail, and perhaps this can be something to be reviewed down the road. Next slide, please. The takeaway, however, is that I think before strategizing our green infrastructure approach, we clearly need to take a step back and rethink our stormwater infrastructure and look at the bigger picture. And these are some translations I borrowed from Sustainable Technologies Evaluation Program that runs within City of Mississauga and CVC. But basically, the one highlighted point here is, instead of being focused on managing this flow rate, perhaps we want to take a step back and look at how we can manage the water cycle as a whole. Next slide, please. While we still have a long way to attain a truly sustainable and integrated water cycle management system here in Oakville, I think by re-evaluating how we define stormwater infrastructure, we can at least start moving towards it. We are never expecting us to be Vancouver One Water in like 6 months, but we can at least take the initial steps towards it. And next slide, please. The other point that I thought to share was, while I appreciate the examples that were shared by in the report and by the director's presentation earlier, we have to be reminded that with green infrastructure, patchworking does not work. We have to kind of look at it as a whole network of solutions, and we need that shift in perspective again, and a strategy that goes with that, that understands and values and supports creating this whole network across the township. Next slide, please. Lastly, there were some other general concerns that I thought is worth highlighting. First was in the end section of the report in considerations part C. There was a clear absence of climate expertise and resiliency lens in this section, in my opinion. I appreciate that the identification of all departments that are going to be involved in this project, but I'm unsure why climate group was not included in this section. If we are claiming incorporation of climate lens, I think a representation must be present at the table from the start. As well, one major thing that I noticed is there's no mention of creating local partnerships anywhere in the strategy, while it is an aspect that we repeatedly see in success stories that are published nationally and internationally as a foundational principle for implementing nature-based solutions successfully. Again, please be mindful that this cannot be an afterthought. We cannot put this in later on. We have to consider it as part of this strategy from the start. I believe that should conclude my delegation. Next slide, please. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your excellent timing. Councillor Duddick?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for your presentation this evening. There was several questions I had throughout, but I can take them offline. The one on your final page, when you talk to partnerships, are you referencing, say, Halton Conservation, other groups that are already addressing these issues with that particular lens?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. All the grassroots NGOs and all local organizations.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the time and the work you did to present this. Councillor Lischina?
Thank you, Your Worship. Ms. Fichkowski, could you make a comment on the dry ponds? We've noted we have 62 stormwater management and 10 dry ponds. Can you just let the public know what they are and should we be having more of?
I don't believe that was part of my presentation, if I'm not mistaken. It was, however, in the...
You had it on one of the slides. Oh, okay, that's fine.
I apologize, I'm unable to find that.
Perhaps, Councillor, you and Ms. Witkowski could interface later.
Absolutely.
Councillor Chisholm?
Could Ms. Witkowski be ample for us to get the her overheads for council?
I'm sure she's eager to let you have them. Am I right, Ms. Witkowski?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Hazlett?
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to pronounce my last name so it is clear how it's pronounced. It's Fichkowski. Thank you.
We will do our best to learn that. Thank you for helping. Councillor Hazlett-Thiel.
Okay, then I'm going to have to try. Ms. Fichkowski? Close? Close? Okay. First of all, thank you very much for sharing your clearly very well informed and a knowledgeable consultant in this area. You mentioned sustainable technologies. Is that a not-for-profit? Is it a private partner?
I want to say they're a private partner. They are out of Credit Valley Conservation. They do provide a lot of training in this field, actually, professional training to municipalities.
And if I'm correct, the chair of the Credit Valley Conservation sits on council. So perhaps we have access to maybe some of that advice that they have to share. So thank you for referencing that.
All right, Madam Clerk, could you please call the next registered delegation?
The next delegation is Terry Branch from the Oakville Community Association.
Welcome, Mr. Branch. We look forward to your presentation.
Councillors, I'm back again. I'm Terry Branch, as everyone knows, Vice President of the Oakville Community Association. I want to say a few things about this item that could impact Oakville residents directly due to the stormwater fee being charged. OCA delegates in the past have mentioned about increased flood risk as it relates to Midtown and increased risk to property damage and loss of life for downstream residents. At the July 11, 2023 meeting, Councillor O'Meara said that he received hundreds of phone calls from the constituents complaining about flooded basements and it's getting worse and something needs to be done about it. Because Oakville has grown exponentially, the term infrastructure is being used a lot now. And with increasing pavements, rooftops, sidewalks, the handling of stormwater has worsened. As an association representing the Oakville community, we are concerned about the safety of Oakville residents from the rising risk of flooding and expanding floodplains, which is why we can support the town in a long-term capital works program to reduce the risk, but we are concerned about the stormwater fee needed being charged to the residents because of current state of the economy and the fact that a lot of residents are already struggling financially. One last point that is extremely concerning is that the town was aware many decades ago that infrastructure was required to help the stormwater and flooding, and we feel that if the infrastructure was completed when first proposed, we would not be forced with the looming fee. Two examples of the past recommendations are report of Tomlinson and Associated dated 1964, entitled Report on Flood Control in the Town of Oakville. This report made numerous recommendations, and it appears that the only one that was done was Morrison Wedgwood diversion, a channel which was completed, I think, in 1969. The second report, 14 Mile Creek, McCraney Creek System, Flood Damage Reduction Preliminary Engineering Report of Phillips Planning, dated in April 1986, one of the recommendations was for construction of 640 acre-feet maximized flood storage reservoir in the 14 Mile Creek, just south of Upper Middle Road and east of Bronte Road. This was unfortunately not implemented, as evidenced by the fact that this is the same location of the Soviet development over 1,000 homes. In conclusion, we can, as an association, support the proposed capital works, but we cannot support the implementation of a fee to fund the capital works because we feel that with the appropriate stormwater capital works planning that goes back decades, the town would have been in a better position when, at that time, to take the necessary action based on the recommendations and not have to pass on the expense to taxpayers. You know, I'm going to give you 5 recommendations. Okay. The town have to address the rainwater management and prevent flooding without burdening the residents with stormwater fee. 1, prioritize and implement past recommendations. The town should revisit the prioritize the recommendations from the past reports, such as the 1964 report on flood control and the 1986 preliminary engineering report. These reports provide valuable insights into flood control measures that could have been implemented earlier. By taking immediate action on these recommendations, the town can demonstrate a commitment to addressing the issue effectively. 2, develop a long-term capital works program. The OCA fully supports the implementation of a long-term capital program to reduce the flood risk in Oakville. This program should focus on constructing and upgrading stormwater infrastructure to better handle the increase in volume stormwater caused by towns with exponential growth. By investing in these infrastructure projects, the town can mitigate flood risk in the future and protect residents. 3, seek funding alternatives. Rather than solely relying on a stormwater fee, The town could explore the funding alternatives to alleviate the financial burden on residents. This could include seeking federal or provincial grants, partnering with private entities for financing and construction, or other financial means. Focus specifically on flood management. By diversifying its funding resources, the town can ensure that residents are not unfairly burdened with additional fees. And 4, consider green stormwater infrastructure. And we heard that already today, and that's good. The town should evaluate the potential implementation of green stormwater infrastructure as a cost-effective and a sustainable solution. GSI techniques such as bioswales, rain gardens, and permeable pavements can help manage the stormwater by allowing it to infiltrate the ground instead of overwhelming drainage systems. Implementing GSI not only reduces flood risk, but also enhances the town's environmental and aesthetic appeal. And 5, free of charge, public awareness education. The town should prioritize the public awareness and education campaigns to inform residents about the importance of stormwater management and their role in reducing flood risk. These campaigns can include tips on rainwater harvesting, proper drainage system maintenance, and responsible land use practices. By engaging and educating residents, the town can foster a sense of community ownership and participation in addressing stormwater management issues. And in conclusion, the Oakville Community Association supports the town's efforts in addressing rainwater management and reduce flood risk through long-term capital work program. However, we strongly oppose the implementation of a stormwater fee on residents considering the current economic conditions and financial struggles faced by many. By implementing the above recommendations and exploring alternative funding sources, the town can address these issues effectively and ensure the well-being and safety of Oakville residents without burdening them with an additional fee. Thank you very much. And one more thing, and we could using Mayor Burton's words on the previous issue before, I'm hoping that councillors could use these 5 recommendations to provide gentle guidance, that's Mayor Burton's word, to the great soldiers that Councillor Hasfield has over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. Council, is somebody prepared to move that the information on the rainwater management financial plan, stormwater fee development next steps, and consideration of green stormwater infrastructure be received, and that staff report back in 2024 with an update on the recommended stormwater fee structure and implementation plan? Councillor, let me get a motion, please. Councillor Longo has bravely moved the motion desired. Thank you. I have speakers, Councillor Haslett-Thiel, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. A few questions just for clarification. So the Riverine studies, I understand they did go through an EA, and thank you very much for sending me the EA links, et cetera. I just want to make sure that from a preferred green alternative, I don't recall when we were going through some of those studies seeing what is typically laid out according to the EA, what are the environmental impacts relative to some of the conversation that the delegates have raised. So are you going to go back and look at them, or are you saying under the functional design stage, you will ensure that the preferred green alternative is further explored?
Oh, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think the answer is sort of a combination. I think there are a few studies that have not yet completed, so they will still have their evaluation. And I think we've given commitment to kind of, I think in the past, we've just sort of given you the preferred recommendation and not really explained all of the whys or the different options that were considered and how they met the criteria. So we will be trying to do a better job of explaining all the alternatives and why the recommendation has come forward. So the studies that haven't been completed, some of that analysis will be provided, and as well through that detailed design stage, we'll be doing that explanation as well.
So thank you for that.
Councillor,
and some of the examples.
Councillor Haslett-Deal, considering the hour and the length of the agenda, I would ask that you give us a motion to continue past the hour, since it looks like we're settling in for a deep dive.
Sure, I'll give you that motion.
Thank you. Council, does anyone object to going past the hour? Please, I'm going to need a better way to do this. Put your hands up so I can count you, please. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against going past the hour. Going past the hour fails. I would ask that we narrow to the matter just before us, and in the interest of economy of time. Could you do that?
Sure, Mayor Burton.
Thank you.
Could I ask that the questions that were on Ms. Knight's slides be responded to in correspondence, in a memo correspondence to council? I would appreciate that. And then my last question is just around the $639.8 million. Of the amount of money that is for improvements to help adapt, is there a way, and I don't expect you to have this tonight, just to help us understand how much of that is green infrastructure benefit? Because I think that would highlight the efforts that have been made and give us better information to the public. So I think that would be helpful. And my last request is if you could just speak to infill developments, because infill developments are a part of some of the challenges we have with it. They're accountable for not filling in our ditches, but they do. They have swales, and yet, you know, we hear examples of them filling that in. Could you speak, whether it's in a memo or correspondence, or Jill's behind you, to how we hold people accountable to preserving that natural, beneficial to their neighborhood approach to managing the rainwater where it falls?
Councillor, could we treat that as gentle encouragement for those things to be included in the report that's coming back next year? Which would be where it would all be relevant?
Sure, Mayor Burton.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Councillor Elgar?
Just a quick question. Thank you, through Mayor. It's regarding backwashing. I've had feedback from people that don't have pools saying they don't want to pay the same fees as people with pools. So I just want to get that on the table when you report back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Nobody wants to pay, I'm sure of that. All right. Councillor Longo has moved the indicated Councillor Duddick.
Sorry, Your Worship, I'm going to be quick. During discussions and reviewing this report, I raised the issue similar to what the gentleman, our last delegate, indicated, that we are doing everything we can to access federal, provincial funding, should it be available, but not only now, but in the future. And by having this plan, the plan will enable us to have the old shovel-ready quote, meaning that we can access on a quick notice that if something becomes available by our federal or provincial colleagues, we'll be able to act on that much better than in the past.
Councillor Duddick, thank you. That's a very trenchant point, and I'm glad you raised it. May I put the vote now? Councillor, is that a yes? Is there anyone in opposition to Councillor Longo's motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion carries. Thank you, everybody. The next item is an urgent request from the Lions Foundation of Canada Dog Guides Community Assistance Request. We have staff available for questions. Councillors Lischina and Adams have drafted a motion and circulated it today. Number one, that the staff report on Lions Foundation of Canada Dog Guides request for community assistance be received. And two, that community assistance to Lions Foundation of Canada Dog Guides be approved to an upset limit of $100,000 funded from corporate contingency. Council, I'd like to put that to a vote. Is there any comment or questions that need to go? Councillor O'Meara.
Just that will be coming to the region for a similar request then as well, because I believe it needs both levels.
I have no information about that.
Okay, just to make sure that Councillor Adams.
This is.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry.
This is where it is. That's where it is. Is there any objection? I will say for the public's benefit that in the report, we are reminded that for good and proper reasons, we made a $107,000 donation to the Acclaim Health installation on Spears Road. Councillor Hazat-Thiel?
I'm pleased to support it, and I hope that should the Oakville Humane Society come to us for a similar request, that we would consider it as well.
Okay, we thank you for fishing for a request. Any objection to the report to the motion by Councillor Longo? I'm sorry, by Councillor Adam and Lischina. And the clerk and I and they will figure out which one of them goes down as moving it, given that it came from both of them. We'll have an arm wrestling match or something. Madam Clerk, there's no objection to the motion. It's carried. It's now my pleasure to solicit a motion to rise and report. Councillor Elgar, thank you for such a quick hand. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on the 6 consent items, the 4 discussion items, as noted by the clerk. And I solicit a mover and seconder for the adoption of this report. Councillor Giddings and Councillor Shi, thank you. Any objection? No objection. The report is adopted. Council, you've had your information items circulated and your status of outstanding issues. I haven't heard of any questions on those. Is there any new business of a congratulatory or condolence nature to come before us? Are there any regional reports or questions? I'm not aware of any requests for reports. I hope there's no surprises. Thank you. Then it would now be in order for a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Hazat-Thiel and Councillor Elgar, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. That motion carries. The bylaws as listed in the agenda are read and considered. And we have finished our work 24 minutes before the witching hour. Thank you, everybody, for the great work you did tonight. It's been terrific working with you, and that ends the meeting.